Welcome in and good morning. It is a Tuesday here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That is Andrew Rogers.
What's going on?
Oh, not too much. Just getting going. Trying to, I had a little bit of a hard time waking up this morning.
I did too. And I don't know if it was because I was still in Utopia after hitting a hole-in-one in Topgolf yesterday, Ravi.
Okay.
Or if it was just because I was tired.
Yeah, I think mine was a little bit of cold medicine, if I'm being honest.
Oh, I can kind of tell
Yeah,
that you're a little stuffed.
a little nasally,
Yeah, you know what?
I mostly feel okay, but
I had that like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I mean, once the weather changes,
it's about that time of year.
It goes downhill, man.
Yeah.
Yep. You know what saved me?
What's that?
Flonase. You got to get on the Flonase.
I've been rocking the Dayquil.
See, I've never been a Dayquil, NyQuil guy.
Yeah.
It's always been the Claritin Flonase treatment.
I'll usually do allergies up to this point, but then I get a certain point where I was like, all right, I got to switch over to Dayquil. So, I'm at that point. I'm at the Dayquil point of the winter.
Yeah, that's it
it
happens,
fall,
right?
I suppose.
Yeah.
But
weather changes.
So let's I want to hear about this Topgolf league because I'm serious because I
excited to see our players after the bye week, so I'm sure you guys have lots of questions.
Yeah, I'm sure
you do have a lot of questions.
I'm sure maybe they got some golf in on the bye week here, but so how does this work? Because I've never been in I've actually never even been to a Topgolf. So
really,
yes, there's one like I could like throw a rock and hit it from my house. So
I bet it's the only Topgolf here in town.
Yes, probably. It's not quite true. I could see it from my house.
So you live close to the mall?
Yeah, ish. Yeah.
Okay.
Couple miles away, but like because the nets are so tall.
Yeah.
But so I've never actually been. I've wanted to go. The few times that I've looked at going, they've got their little app and it's like tells you the wait time, and it was like 2+ hour wait, and I was like, yep,
that's how it always is.
Not going today. So I've wanted to go. I've heard it's a lot of fun, but I didn't know they have leagues. How does that work? Is it like, do you play holes?
So we play the games that they offer.
Okay, sure.
So there are a bunch of different games. Last night's game was Topgolf Contender, which is you hit 4 into the red, which is the shortest one to you.
Okay.
That's about maybe like 15, 20 yards away.
Okay.
Maybe. Yellow is about 50 yards, 60 max away.
Okay.
So you go red, yellow, green, brown, blue, white. And that's how like the holes are laid out. And it gradually gets further and further.
Okay.
The more points for the ones that are further away when it's that turn.
Yeah.
Right. And then we did a quick 9, which is red, yellow, green. You just hit 9 balls, 3 into the red, 3 into the yellow, 3 into the green.
Okay.
And, it's really fun because you just play, like I said, the ones that are already in their system. But what I love most about it is, yes, a couple of things that you already said. One, there's no wait time because you show up every Monday and you play from 7 to 9.
So
right?
Yeah, that's nice.
You're like it's already out there.
It's like pre-reserved for you.
Right. And 2, the amount of money that we pay each to be in this league, because it's a team of 6.
Yeah.
The amount of money that we each pay is significantly less
than a
normal outing.
Okay.
Because we play, we'll call it 9 weeks.
Sure.
Not really sure if it's 9 and maybe 8.
Yeah.
We play 8 or 9 weeks. We pay $110 each.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
No, because when you break down the math,
so it's like $15 a week.
Yeah, it's like $20 a week max.
Not bad at all.
You know how much it costs to like reserve a bay for an hour?
Oh yeah,
it's at least $40.
Yeah, it can be
right.
double at least.
So we get an hour of practice time. So we're there from 6 to 9.
Oh, so you get 3 hours.
Now they make it back on food and drink and all that stuff.
But still.
But you don't always have to do that.
Yeah,
like last night,
if you didn't want to.
Last night I was like, I'll have a beer. Like I don't normally get a beer. First off, it's expensive as all heck to get beer there. Like I think my mango cart was $7.50.
I do love a mango cart,
and it was fantastic.
Oh man, I had over the first time like this summer, and I'm kind of obsessed with it now. I love mango,
and it's really light. It's a really light beer,
easy drinker, which is like my primo.
And then I got mac and cheese bites, and those were like $13.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you're spending.
So it's like
they make it back on
food,
right? So normally I don't eat there. I go somewhere else afterward, or I'll eat at home before I go. And but just all in all, it's just a really fun opportunity to literally golf whenever you don't want to just be on the course.
Yeah, and that's
Get your swings in.
I mean, so that's kind of the appeal to me, right? Because part of the reason I haven't golfed much in the last several years is just the time commitment, right? Is there's
you got to play for about 4 hours.
Yeah, like if you're playing 18, like that's a pretty good chunk of your day there, especially if you're going at all early to hit on the range, especially if you're having a drink afterward with your friends. I mean, that could pretty easily turn into a 6-7 hour day, especially if you're not golfing somewhere super close to you, Because I used to go not super far, but I would go out to like Blair or Fremont or Ashland or whatever. That's another half hour each way. And so that's why the idea of Topgolf has been so appealing to me. So I need to, and they heat the bays, right?
Oh yeah.
So
there's like, heaters above.
So it can be pretty cold out and still be reasonably comfortable.
Gosh, this would have been like 3-4 years ago. No, it was probably longer than that. Gosh, time just flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
I was at Topgolf for New Year's Eve.
Oh, okay.
And it was snowing. It was like a blizzard outside.
I feel like that'd actually be really cool.
Dude, it was so cool. But every time you hit the ball, you had no idea where it went.
Right. You're just like, it looks cool as hell, but I have no idea where that
ball
went.
Now what Topgolf has are trackers.
They've got tracers?
They have simulators now.
Oh, that's
It's
nice.
like simulator tracers.
Yeah.
And you can see exactly where the ball goes. They've really stepped up their game.
Nice.
Like, at first, I was like, Topgolf, like I'm not really into it anymore because it was just recycled.
Yeah.
It's the same thing over and over.
But
you go back, you play the same thing. You go back, you play the same thing. Now they have like an Angry Birds setting. They have closest to the pin that you can play. They have all like the league stuff too. But then I was just reading because I'm like, man, I was kind of upset. Like I got a hole in one. At least I think it was a hole in one. We all did. Because it was like 120-point shot, which only would make sense if you hit in the hole.
I
like
think that's right. Yeah.
And so I'm like, why aren't people celebrating this? Like, where are the fireworks? and not just the fireworks, but like, where's my prize? You know how hard that is to do?
It's like when you get to I don't know if you ever go like bowling, they've got like special prizes if you get like 2 strikes in a row or whatever. And your thing is probably way more rare than that.
Oh, 100%. So I started looking it up. And there are like places, I don't think in Omaha, but outside of Omaha, where they do award hole-in-one prizes.
Yeah.
They offer those things. And I'm like, okay, guys, like I know I was like getting on you because you didn't really have updated games or anything. Now it's time to like upgrade. Shane, what are you doing over there, man? I hear those keys jingling and jangling.
Fixing stuff.
Now it's time
playing handyman.
Yeah, good for you, man.
Yep.
Now it's time
Call me Tim the Tool Man.
You really strike me more as a Wilson. I could never see more than the top of your head out that window there.
About like that?
Yep, right there.
Yep.
Anyway, now it's time to reward us here in Omaha for hole-in-ones.
Okay, so I have seen
like look at this hole-in-one prize.
That's terrific.
I don't know where that's at.
I don't know. But you get some golf clubs.
There was awesome. It's Topgolf Thailand. That's in Thailand.
So Thailand, they've got some different rules than here in Omaha.
You know how much money it is to go to Thailand? Too much for me.
Well, yeah, but you get some free clubs if you hit a hole in one.
I don't think I'm going to risk that.
Worth it. So I've seen there's this Top Golf concept for baseball that they started in like Texas, and so they've got this little. It looks like one of those kind of little kid like pop-up machines where the ball like, comes out of the ground, but it's with like real baseballs instead of wiffle balls or whatever. And then you hit the ball
like
and
soft toss.
Yeah, it's like soft toss. So you hit the ball and then it has one of those like tracer projector screens. I don't know if you've seen those on like TikTok or anything. I called them and was like trying to see if I could franchise it here because I was like that would be incredible if you got one of those down by the College World Series.
Yeah.
But they're not franchising right now. So I was like, I'm trying to figure out how to get this figure out this technology so I can do it myself.
Is it called Home Run Dugout?
Maybe. Yeah. If you just Google Top Golf for baseball, you'll find it.
Oh, so it's like a simulator.
Yeah, it's a simulator. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like Top Golf.
No, it's more like the tracer technology.
Yeah, sure.
It's more like a Beyond Golf.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's for baseball. The ball pops up, you hit it. It like shows where you go, and it kind of gamifies it the same way Top Golf does.
You
make a killing.
You know how much the Blatt makes?
Oh, I know.
For the College World Series, like they only have to be open 2 weekends in the full week out of the year, or full 2 weeks out of the year. and they make enough money back.
Same thing with like Rocco's and all those places down there. Yeah.
They make enough money back so that they don't have to be in business any more than those 2 weeks.
Right. And so those places serve like alcohol and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, man, I need to figure out a way to start one of these. I actually contacted them, but they're not franchising right now. Not in Omaha, at least. I think they're staying in Texas right now.
Why wouldn't you just jump all over the opportunity to
Dude,
hear somebody out?
I would.
And be like, hey, guys, college base. This is like, remember Ivan Melendez, the Hispanic Titanic?
Yeah.
He played here.
I mean, everybody plays
Everybody
here.
wanted to be him.
Everybody plays here, right? If you can get one of those things down by the Charles Schwab Field, the Chuck, oh, man, it'd be incredible.
Man, that's a good call. What else would you franchise? What is there like a business? Take away the home run dugout, take away whatever Topgolf we were talking about. If there was something you could franchise here in town, what would it be?
Well, so there's like two different ideas to this, right? It's like what thing would make you the money the easiest, and what would you have the most fun doing? If I was just trying to make money, I'd probably franchise like a Chick-fil-A. Those places like print money. Like
you are probably 131,000th in line.
I know, right? But those things every time I drive by one, they're busy. They are, I think, pretty reasonable to start up in terms of cost, and you get a lot of corporate help in terms of.
Are they reasonable to start up?
I mean, in the grand scheme of franchises, like it's still expensive. But
I thought it was like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be way off. I thought it was like $1 million that you had to have like on retainer. Just in case.
Let me check here.
Like the startup may have been small, like the fee to pay like $100,000 or whatever, but I think you had to have at least like $1 million in the bank,
like assets.
Yeah.
So this one's. I think it depends on location, because it says somewhere between. Okay, so the franchise fee is only $10,000.
Okay,
but it costs in order to like buy the land, build the building, all that kind of stuff, between $350,000 and $2 million, depending on where you're at.
Okay.
So like high real estate value areas, you're going to be closer to the $2 million.
I guess I'm building mine in Bora Bora.
I think you're building yours in like San Francisco. with that,
I don't want to be in San
Francisco. $2 million or New York, one of those. Like, but like 350, you're probably You're probably closer to the 350 end in Omaha. So, but the 10,000 is the startup fee. Usually the other costs you can get on like a business loan or something if you've got assets to show it there, or a business model. So
got it. So yours would be a Chick-fil-A.
If I was just trying to make money, if I was just trying to have a good time, like having fun, I've always wanted to own a gym. Like I'd franchise like a Gold's Gym or a Lifetime Fitness or something like that.
Both. You guys can go into business together.
And I don't think people know this much about me now, but I was such a meathead for so long. Like up until about 2 years ago.
Yeah, there was literal pork in your head.
Yeah, there was. It was just rattling around in there. Just got some spare ribs in there.
But a little bit of barbecue.
Yeah, I it's coming out my ears a little bit. No, I've always wanted to own a gym, so that would be cool to franchise like a big time gym.
Do we have like pretzel places here in town? Like soft pretzel places?
Annie Ann's. I think.
Well, Annie Ann's is at the mall. Like
but that's the only one I can think of that I've seen around here.
So would you be like Ben Stiller in Dodgeball?
No, not quite. Although I would love to put together like a dodgeball team. But no, that would be fun. You can do all sorts of stuff like that. I would enter into like all sorts of weird, stupid competitions and stuff. It'd be super fun. But I don't know that there's many pretzel places.
Annie Ann's popped up. So I always wanted to open up like a pretzel, just like kind of like a pretzel joint.
Yeah,
where like you had big soft pretzels. You can do like pretzel dogs, things like that, because every time the Super Bowl rolls around, I'm looking for a good pretzel, like to have, like to bring to like your party sampler, right?
Yeah.
And nobody has it. And if you call Annie Ann's, it has to be like way in advance.
Yeah, I think you can, if you're willing to like heat them up, I think you can get them at Costco.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I would love, because St. Louis was a place that has like tons of them. Like Gus's Pretzels is like a really
like
popular
a big pretzel place.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about emos a lot, but like Gus's Pretzels is like the emos to St. Louis for pretzels.
Okay.
Right?
Emos is the pizza, right?
Like Anheuser-Busch is the beer of St. Louis. Like Gus's Pretzels is the pretzels of St. Louis. Now there's other pretzel joints around, but like I thought about that when I lived in Sioux City. They had nothing. They didn't even have a Cane's in Sioux City.
Yeah.
I thought that's like, if I could franchise anything, it'd be a Cane's,
Cane's would
like
be good.
right by the casino,
Mhm.
because that's right on the strip of bars too. When like,
Yeah.
you know, the college scene or
They all
whoever
get
gets out and they're
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, let's go to Cane's. Like, I feel like you could make a ton of money doing that. So I guess Cane's in Sioux City. I'd probably do a pretzel place though. I don't know why. You know, I'm always into cooking.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have I definitely don't have the skill set to be like a master chef.
Right.
So, you know, I probably could figure out how to bake a pretzel.
I think so. I feel like the franchise cooking is a little bit easier than gourmet cooking.
Well, and I
right?
love watching those videos of them like
where they like
rolling out
tie
the
the
dough,
pretzels
but they like flip it once, like
and
a
it's
jump
done.
rope,
Yeah,
and it's done.
Yeah, it's incredible. It looks like a David Blaine trick. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Shane, what would you franchise?
I don't know. It's probably already been franchised.
Well, like all the things we're talking about have been franchised already, Shane.
I mean, I would try to maybe do a golf type of store.
A golf store.
Like an Ostad's.
How would you be different though?
Yeah, I don't know if you could necessarily be different, but I mean, has that actually maxed out in the market? Even though there's 100 golf courses and there's already like 3 or 4 of them. I don't know. I
So
mean,
you're saying you see a
is the-
market inefficiency between the number of golf courses and the number of golf shops.
Is there a possibility of doing that in Lincoln?
Is there a golf store in Lincoln?
I don't know. I don't shop in Lincoln often. Like usually I'm going there
It doesn't
for
ever pop up on the Google, but
you know what I mean? Like I'm usually going there for
Okay,
an
all right,
event.
Shane, I'm with you.
Golf store.
Yeah.
All right.
What would you call it, Shane?
Shane's World.
No, can't steal my name.
I was gonna say
I already air patented that name.
Andrew's already got that on LLC. He's got a trademark.
That's my pretzel shop.
Hey, when you walk in, you'd hear a lot of excellent, Shane's World.
Game on, bro.
Game on. That would be sweet.
Unbelievable.
Would that just not be
Party on.
awesome?
I didn't realize you were that into golf, Shane. Like I didn't know.
He actually is a big golf fan.
There
Yeah.
you go. All right.
Yeah, he used to play a lot, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
In high school, yeah. I mean, I was on the varsity team in high school, so
He was on the varsity.
Shane
team.
Schillerberg,
Hey.
varsity golfer.
Hey,
I
back
tried.
off.
I tried to be on the varsity football team, but people wouldn't have it. They
Didn't
said I
you
was
play
just,
football too?
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. I
That-
would love to see Shane in
That
pads.
would be incredible. Shane, I'm not trying to be mean here, so you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
All right.
How
you got?
were you this size in high school too, or like were you smaller? Like were you really small in high school?
No, it was probably this size.
Okay, I don't know because some people like get.
What do you think? He just sprouted after
Well,
high school and he got 3 inches.
I don't know. I've known some people that like were.
I probably weighed 5 pounds less.
Okay, sure, yeah. No, I've known some people that.
I
Like,
mean,
were-
I put on that heavy weight.
you changed weight classes. You went from bantam to
I went
feather.
from 103 to 112.
Oh,
Hey Shane,
whoa,
Shane, I'm
easy.
not trying to sound mean here, but I'm going to actually sound mean by asking you this. You should have just asked.
I was trying to
By
make
saying
sure,
that, like you're
was
not.
it
It's not a
worse?
get out of jail free card.
with all due respect.
Shane's like, just say it,
You
right,
can't
Shane?
just say with all due respect and have
Mhm.
say whatever you want. No, that's what that means. No, I was just curious because some people like they grow early and then they just stay the same size for a long time. Like I've been 5'9" since like 6th grade. Like I've been the same.
You probably
height.
had a full beard in 6th grade.
I did start shaving in 6th grade. Yeah, it wasn't quite like this, but I did have to start shaving. In
I had a
6th grade.
buddy, his family super Italian.
Yeah.
Super. And by 6th grade, he was also shaving. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you're crazy, man.
I got a razor for my 12th birthday.
I don't even remember my first hair.
That's a real thing. For my 12th birthday, I got a razor.
I remember getting razors in the mail from like Gillette
I was like,
when I
this-
turned 18.
I was like, this is not a good gift, Mom. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm 12. I wanted a baseball glove.
And now you want to open a baseball shop.
That's true. It's because I'm traumatized.
Home
from
run
the-
dugout.
We'll call it something else. I don't know what.
Hey, you can call it whatever.
Lula's long ball. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Mm.
See what happens.
You already. I can tell you've already been thinking about this.
I haven't thought about it a lot at all or anything. I haven't like looked into the technology and priced out tracers and all that kind of
I'm
stuff.
sure it's really inexpensive.
Oh no, it's a pretty penny. That's why I don't have one yet. We'll figure it out. I might have to sell some assets in order to do that, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. You
I'll
know?
sell your assets too.
I
mine.
don't think, maybe you could come in and be a silent partner.
Say less.
Yes, say less. That's what silent means. Coming up on the show today, we'll probably talk less about franchises, but I can't promise that.
Well, who knows? Because we could be talking about Major League Baseball franchises. We could be
Sure.
talking about football franchises.
Probably less about franchising places and
That's
more
probably
about
true.
sports franchises. We're going to talk to Mike Gross. He covers Penn State up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Big football game this week for them.
Ohio State, Penn State. That's going to be enormous. The best game probably in the country this
I'm
week.
curious to know if Ohio State is healthy.
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. We've got Mike Schaefer at 9:00. Husker 24/7. Love talking to Schaefer as always.
Mikey Mike.
And Louie Vaccher of Northwestern. He's at the Wildcat Report. Going to start giving us a little preview on the Wildcats.
I feel like we've talked to Louie
a million times.
At least.
A million times.
Now, Pat Fitzgerald didn't help that.
No, he certainly didn't.
I feel like we just talk to Louie, but he's so great, we bring him back.
Well, I feel like every other week we've been talking to Louie because Northwestern's always in the news for something, and usually it's not football.
Well, now they're 500.
Once in a lifetime opportunity.
Listen, they're dramatically better than I thought they were going to be this year. I thght this was like a 1-11 team because they were a 1-11 team last year, and their coach got fired,
and they
right
had a lot of
before the
movement
season
on the roster. Yeah,
I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a disaster. So you have to give him a lot of credit with Coach Braun, who came in from North Dakota State and got kind of thrust into this position that he got there as a defensive coordinator like a month before he took the head coaching job.
You can probably expect he'll keep that head coaching job for a little while now that he's already gotten 3 wins.
Yeah. I mean, wildly outperformed expectations, which were nothing. I mean, the expectations were 0.
Nobody expected them to win a game.
No,
after everything that happened,
I thought they were going to be bad
to
anyway. Like even with Pat Fitzgerald, after all that happened, like I said, if they won a game this year, I was going to be surprised.
Now they're still not a good football team.
No, I mean it took them 23-20 to beat Howard before their bye week. Like they're not good, right? Howard was 2-3 at the time. Like they're not good, right? But they're dramatically better than total disaster, which is what I think everybody expected them to be. So
now when you play a good defense, though, like Nebraska, like Penn State,
it can look really ugly.
That's why the line is as big as it is.
Yeah,
people may look at this line and be like, "Hey guys, Nebraska's 3-3 too. It should not be 12." Well, playing good defenses is very difficult for Northwestern.
Yeah, I mean Northwestern doesn't have a lot of firepower when they're playing bad defenses, so it's kind of the thing we talked about with Iowa yesterday, where
in Oklahoma State,
it doesn't matter how bad the defense is. If you're not competent on offense, you're not getting anywhere still. So I think that's kind of where Northwestern is kind of in the not really competent on offense deal. So we'll see how that turns out, but I'm excited to talk to Louie again for probably, it feels like the 10th time since August, but we appreciate all the time he always gives us. That's the show. And
then ask me anything, right?
Yeah, we've got Hurrdat Sports AMA. Andrew's got questions for me. I got questions for Andrew. If you've got questions for us, give us a call at the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline, 888-638-4876. We'll continue the show coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Big week for us, huge week for us. Playing an excellent Northwestern team, 3-3. Unbelievable comeback win over Minnesota. Down, I think it was 31-10. Coach Braun's doing a fantastic job. So it'll be a heck of a ball game. Excited to have a chance to play them. Excited for this week. Excited to see our players after the bye week. So I'm sure you guys have lots of questions.
Welcome back. Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers in with me as well. We're just over here furiously Googling NBA assistant coach salaries. Because
I asked you during the break, I said, would you leave an assistant job in the NBA to go be a head coach in the WNBA? Because we saw Nate Tibbetts do that yesterday.
Yeah, to become the highest paid coach in the WNBA, which our crack research team, which is me and Andrew Googling during the break.
No, it's not. We have a full team.
We've got like the Pat McAfee team over there. Got 18 guys that talk once a show, just Googling things.
At least our camera angles don't just switch abruptly. And you get guys just staring at the camera while other people are talking.
We don't just have an AJ Hawk fathead for half the show, not saying a word. I don't know why that bothers me so much. I just don't understand it. It's like only cut to him when he's talking. What's happening here? Because most of the time it's just him sitting there like this. It's like, okay, AJ, all right, sounds good.
They're
But
just seeing if he's still paying attention.
apparently with McAfee, he's making a buck to do it. So whatever, that's cool. So Nate Tibbetts left a assistant job in the NBA to be the highest paid coach in the WNBA. So upon some quick Googling, that's going to put him over $1 million for the WNBA job
in Phoenix.
Because currently Becky Hammond is the highest paid WNBA coach at right around $1 million. So if he's eclipsing that, obviously he's going to be into that 7 figures as well. And then NBA coaches can make it from brief Googling, depending on if you're kind of the guy behind the bench or a lead assistant, anywhere from about $100,000 to $1 million. So I'm guessing it's a pay raise for him. Otherwise, he probably doesn't.
You'd have to guess because Orlando's not a great team.
They're not a great team. They're not really famous for spending a ton of money.
So he's
on their
probably
franchise.
on the low end of that contract.
Even if he's
maybe he makes $300K. Let's just say that.
I was gonna say 5.
Okay, $500K.
But he's at least doubling his salary, right? So that's not nothing, right? Even when you're talking about those numbers, people are really quick to be like, "Oh, well, if I had $500,000, I'd be fine with whatever." It's like, yeah, but if somebody offered you $1 million, you probably take it, right? Like,
I don't know if it depends on the job, right?
Sure. But like with Matt Ishby as your owner,
right,
down in Phoenix, I mean, that's pretty tempting. He's a pretty capable guy. It seems like he's obviously willing to spend money. He made the Kevin Durant deal happen basically as soon as he came over and took over the team. He made the Bradley Beal deal happen as well. Like that dude's a mover and shaker. Whatever you need, you're probably gonna get. And to be fair, a lot of these guys, it's kind of a weird position, right? Because we assume, hey, the NBA is their dream, and that might be true. But for a lot of them, being a head coach is their dream. It's not necessarily about the NBA or college basketball or whatever it is. Their dream is to be a head coach and to run a franchise. And so it really depends on where your priorities are in terms of your coaching career, right?
Well, one of my best friends growing up, rather in college and beyond, his dream is coaching girls basketball at the high school level.
Sure.
Like he wants to be a head coach for girls basketball, though.
I have a buddy that does that here in the state of Nebraska.
He feels that girls respond better to like the training, that at least the way that he coaches his coaching style versus guys.
Sure.
And so that's why he likes coaching girls over guys. So that may be another thing too.
Just the dynamic of the
personally, even if I was offered $1 million and I was making $500K with the Magic, I wouldn't leave. I wouldn't leave the NBA. And that's just because of what we talked about. Was it earlier this week? I think it was last week. Like, how many people knew the WNBA finals were happening?
Yeah, there's a I don't know if a PR is the right word, but there's a publicity problem a lot of times with the WNBA. Their finals are going on right in the middle of baseball playoffs, right in the middle of the NFL season, right as the NBA is about to start, right as college basketball is about to start. Like, it kind of gets lost. They used to, I think the season got pushed back. I could be wrong here, but it used to be the finals were like in August, and that made more sense, right?
Right.
You're in Major League Baseball regular season. You don't have college football yet. You don't have pro football yet. You don't get lost in the shuffle as much, and that's a way more advantageous time frame for them to be to have their finals, so they get more eyeballs on it, right?
I would much rather have the prowess of being in the NBA, being a coach in the NBA, versus being the head coach in the WNBA.
I'll be honest. I would have a hard time if our numbers are accurate, and let's just say for our hypothetical they are. I'd have a hard time not going for doubling my salary to over $1 million, at least doubling. We don't know what his number is, right? Like, he could be, if they give him $1.5 million, he might be tripling his salary. That's pretty hard to say no to.
I'm sure it is,
especially for largely the same job, right? I get there's more responsibilities as a head coach versus assistant coach and stuff like that, but it's also a shorter season. They don't play as many games as the WNBA as they do in the NBA.
That is true.
So it's probably a little less taxing in that sense, even though you are in charge. Man, that'd be really hard for me to say no.
I just wouldn't want to be mad every day. And here's why I say that. I wouldn't want to be mad that this team isn't getting the support that I think they deserve.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's totally fair.
What I don't want. So I'm not going to put myself in a position
to be mad
where I'm just going to be mad because all I'm going to be doing is talking to the media and being like, why isn't this city showing support for X team and Y team? It's like, no, I'm going to put myself in a position to where I'm going to be happy with, what's already
Sure.
established and with the prowess of that league.
Although, to be fair, at Orlando, do you run into some of the same problems of not getting a ton of the attention?
Maybe, but when you talk about the NBA,
Sure.
people know what,
Yeah.
like everything and anything about the NBA. Even those that say I hate the NBA,
They know.
you can tell you can say a few things about the NBA and can probably guess who the top 5 players in the league are right now.
Sure.
Who the best coach in the NBA is right now. You can name that.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I don't know if I could name 3 WNBA players.
I could, but it's obviously a lot harder for me, than it is for the NBA. Part of that's because I'm an NBA nerd, right? But I definitely understand your point. I honestly, I would have a hard time turning down the money if I'm being totally honest. Like that's a lot,
and I just don't want to do the job for money,
Yeah.
right? I'd rather do the job because I love everything I'm doing each and every day.
Yeah,
and I don't want to be mad.
I'm totally okay. I'm totally okay doing the job for money,
which is fine. Everybody has their price, right?
Yeah.
Whatever is pulling you in a certain direction.
And I imagine Nate Tibbetts is kind of the same way, right? Like he probably.
But you brought up a great point about wanting to be a head coach.
Yeah,
because I'm with you there. There's a dream just to be a head coach.
Yeah.
And whether you get there through the NBA, which is very difficult,
really hard to do,
very difficult
to the WNBA,
right?
And this is kind of a trend you've started to see more of is the WNBA poaching assistants from the NBA that maybe aren't on that fast track. Because you kind of get these guys that they become the darlings of the league. Like Nick Nurse was a really popular one a few years ago before he went to Toronto. He kind of became this darling of the league, and you knew he was going to end up being a head coach someday. Tyronn Lue was the same way before he got his first head coaching job, where the league becomes enamored with certain guys, and it feels like if you get past a certain point in your assistant coaching career, you kind of almost miss your shot, like to become the darling of the league and to elevate yourself. Like it seems like you don't have a lot of grinders as assistants that end up being head coaches in the NBA anymore. And that used to be more of so maybe he just read the tea leaves and he's like, hey, it's not going to happen for me here. I want to be a head coach. Also, I'm going to make a ton more money. Like, why not?
Phoenix isn't a bad place to live either.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And like we said, you got a pretty good owner. We think, he's pretty new at this still, but seems like he's
got a lot of money. He's willing to invest.
Yeah, he's willing to give you the resources, which is about all you can ask from your owner most of the time. And
okay, so question for you, and I know put money aside.
Sure.
Like imagine you're making the same.
Yeah,
dollars
to dollars the same.
Would you rather be a head coach in the WNBA or a head coach of a G League team?
Oh, WNBA. G League is so hard because your goals are different. Like G League is. So many teams don't care about their G League team winning, and that would be really hard for me because it's all about development and getting guys down. It's the same thing we see in AAA with baseball, right? We've talked to Marty Cordero a bunch. Like Mike Jerchley has a really tough job because his roster is never the same. He's got guys coming and going, especially with the.
But winning a PCL championship is pretty fun.
It is super cool, right? But it's a really hard job, and it's way different than like a normal.
Depends if you like development, like 'cause that's like college football, right? Like,
with college football, the goal is still to win, though, right? Like more,
sure.
Like
but what I'm saying is with the development aspect of it.
But the primary goal in the G League isn't to win; it's to develop. And so you totally flip. It's almost going like to youth coaching, almost where the wins shouldn't matter. And in the G League, they put their money behind it. The wins don't matter. They're literally just trying to make their franchise better. That'd be really hard for me.
You know what we need to do?
What's that?
We need to call my buddy who just got the job with the Maine Celtics.
There we go.
We'll call him and we'll ask him.
Listen, I'm sure it's a great job, but it's tough.
But I don't want to say it's all about development. Like I bet there are other objectives there.
Internally, yes, but from the top, it's about development.
Well, development, of course,
yes.
is it's the main piece of the umbrella, right?
Yeah.
But all in all, I'd be cool with coaching up some NBA players to get them to the next level.
Coming up next, we'll wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Well, I love Husker fans. Let me say that. Okay. I'm talking about the team. Like the only reason why we have the opportunities we have is because there's so much care about the program. I just have to make sure our players don't act like fans. They act like the guys that are going to go out and play. And so if you're not careful, then all these things start to infiltrate the team. And so I go back and I just look at history. Okay. You look at the team, look at Nebraska football over the last 8 to 10 years in the second half of the season. It's abysmal. Okay. That's not a knock on anyone. I respect the heck out of those. Those are good coaches, But like we can't be the type of team that, we lose, we lost to Colorado, we're embarrassed, we come back, we win, we play okay, not very great against La Tech, right? Then we go out, we get embarrassed against Michigan. Now we're embarrassed. Now we can play great against Illinois. We just can't be that team. I don't want to coach that team, and our players don't want to be a part of that team. So that's what it is.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, Twitter, YouTube, all the places where you can stream us, see our bright and shining faces here on the lovely video streams that we have. You can also catch us anywhere that you listen.
Until it goes out.
Well, yeah, until inevitably at somewhere between 8:30 and 9 o'clock.
You'll see the rotating wheel on the screen.
The rotating wheel of doom, much like you used to see on the old Xbox 360s when they would the red
ring of death.
Yeah, the red ring of death. RIP, pour one out for all those lost Xbox 360s out there. Interesting conversations so far today, but Coach Rhule brought up some real interesting stuff in his press conference. He talked for a pretty long time, about a half hour yesterday.
Yeah, a little over a half hour.
And
tons of good stuff in there.
It was that clip that Shane just played there hit on something that I'm not even sure I realized at the time, but it's a pretty stark difference in the way your role in relation to the team determines how you process and view a season, right? So he's talking about players need to think one way, fans need to think one way, and his coaching staff needs to think one way. And I think what really put it into focus for me is because it sounded different the way he was talking about it, right? And so I was trying to figure out, why does this sound so different? And I ended up going back to Coach Pelini, who had this kind of us versus the world mentality. And unfortunately, that included the fans by the end, right? It was hey, we're kind of insulated, like we're in the bunker. Everybody outside of this bunker is against us. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the major complaints about Pelini, was he didn't necessarily embrace what the fan base could bring to the table, and that the fan base is part of what made Nebraska special, right? Because, let's be honest here. There's no reason Nebraska should be good at football. Like, there's no geographic advantages. There's no population advantages. Nebraska's good at football has been good at football, and I think will be good at football again, because basically the people of the state have willed it to happen, and the university has agreed to put its resources. Agreed to put its resources into the program because of how much the people care about it. And so the people of Nebraska are a huge advantage to this program, maybe the only real advantage they have outside of the investment that the university puts into it. And so it was always really frustrating, I know, for me and for most Husker fans, the way that Pelini kind of insulated the team from the fans, kind of almost created a resentment between the team and the fans. And that was really, really kind of sad and frustrating. But I didn't know what the answer was, because I understood a lot of the things that Pelini was saying, of like outside noise, things that we hear Coach Rhule talk about, right? But the thing that he did that Pelini didn't was he articulated that it's okay for fans to think that way, because they are fans. Their role in this is different than his team's role. And it's not the fans' job to get the team to think right. It's his job to get the team to think right. Fans are supposed to think that way.
Fans fan.
He talked about it with his own family, right? It's like, hey, my daughters look at this team differently than I do, for good reason. And they look at it differently than the fans do. And I just thought that was really interesting, because I don't know that I've ever heard a coach actually articulate it in that way and say, hey, it's not the fans' fault that they think a certain way. That's their job. It's my job to keep the players from thinking that way. And I just was
to kind of state the obvious.
Yeah, to state the obvious, but also put his finger on something that I'm not sure I would have been able to. Right? Like sometimes there's these things that they're sort of in the air, and you would think they're obvious, but until somebody simply states it, you don't totally grasp what the thing is, right? You know it's there. Like, on the surface, it's really easy to say, like, yeah, fans and players should think about the season differently. And But it's a different thing to say, hey, it's not the fans' fault if the players are listening to outside noise too much. That's my fault. That's the players' fault. We need to be strong enough mentally to not let outside noise, which helps our program.
That clarity makes, I think that's the point you were trying to push across. That makes more sense.
Differentiating between whose job it is to do what and owning that, I think was a big deal in what Matt Rhule was saying yesterday.
I will say this, though, about Pelini, and, I wasn't here for, all the antics.
Sure, yeah.
But I almost wonder if it was hard for him. Yet his personality made it hard just in general.
Yes, yeah.
But hard to deal with it because they were winning, but he could never get over the hump.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it was like he peaked at 9-3, 10-4, whatever it was. Like, that's like, but he could never get to that 11th win.
He could never get the conference title. He could never get to that next step.
And I think because he was winning, and because of the way that fans were probably talking about the team, like, how can we get so close and always just stall?
Yeah.
How does the car just stall here? That started to eat him alive a little bit and then eat the team alive a little bit. So that's what the us against the world mentality stemmed from.
Absolutely.
That's just, an outsider looking in. I don't know if that was like 100% a fact, but I think it's a fair thing to think.
Oh, I think you're dead on. I think it was a huge factor because I think the fans thought, hey, we are so close to taking that next step. Why can't we do that? And Pelini is thinking, hey, I'm giving you 9 and 10 wins every year. Why isn't that good enough? Right? Like that's a very solid football program. Why isn't that good enough? And there's lots of factors there. Like they would get blown out by every good team they played by the end of his era there. They weren't staying close with any of the good teams. They were winning the games they should win, but they were getting blown out by any good team, right? So that was something that rubbed people the wrong way. And it felt like they were a lot closer to 6 or 7 wins by the end of it, even though they were still winning nine games, right? It felt like they were a lot closer.
Did it feel more like in Iowa? Like in Iowa this year?
Yeah.
Like, should they have 6 wins already?
It felt like they were a lot closer to backsliding to being a 6 or 7 win team than it was taking the step forward. Because at the beginning of the Pelini era, like 2009, you're thinking like the Texas Big 12 championship game. You got Ndamukong Suh, best player in college football. I don't care what the Heisman said. Ndamukong Suh was the best player in college football. One of the best players in college football of the 21st century.
Well, he went number 1 in the draft, right?
He went 3, I think.
We're saying he went number 1.
But he's incredible. He was, I mean, you want to talk about generational talent. Nobody's going to argue with me on Suh on generational talent there, right? So you had this team, and that team felt like it was way closer to winning 11, 12. He went 2. Okay. So we split the difference. So that team 2009 felt like, oh man, they're really close to winning 11 or 12 games. And then it kind of started to slowly slide back, and it was still 9 or 10 wins every year, but it felt like we were further and further away from taking that next step. And I think that's where the frustration crept in. But again, if Pelini had been able to say, hey, I appreciate your passion. I want to take the next step too. I need my guys not to hear what you're saying, though. And that's my job. That's not on your job to stop saying it. It's on me to make sure my message is louder in their heads than yours, which is basically what Rhule's saying. That's all Rhule's saying. Is like, hey, what I tell my guys needs to be more important than what they're hearing from you. Not that I want you to stop saying it because I love you guys, right? He literally says that. I love Nebraska fans. But what I say to my locker room needs to be louder in their heads than what they're hearing from outside the locker room.
Well, he hates Twitter. Matt Rhule hates Twitter.
I think every football coach hates Twitter. I've never met a football coach that's like, yeah, Twitter, except for maybe Lane Kiffin.
Right. I think Rhule, though, is at an advantage.
Sure.
Because he came into a program that was broken.
Yes.
And it's easier to speak like a prophet in a broken program.
Absolutely.
Than it is in one that's already won.
Absolutely.
So but what I really like about him is that he stays within himself.
Sure.
Like he's really the no BS mentality. Every answer that he kind of has is, he speaks what he thinks.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, I was coached up by other people in the athletic department to talk like this.
Right.
No, this is how he's talked since he first got here.
Not just since he got here, since he was, you go play clips from Temple and Baylor. He's the same guy.
Right. But I love the way that, he kind of broke down everybody in its own sort of circle, right? You have the staff, you have the players, you have the fans, and he kind of talked about all three and how you can integrate into one.
And everybody has a role to play.
Right.
Right.
but everybody's role is completely different.
Yeah, it's separate.
So yeah, I really like that. And then I really liked his answer to the PFF grades.
Yeah.
When he was asked about that, because I felt like a little bit of vulnerability there from him. Like I could kind of like, because I think the word he used was struggle. Like I struggle with this.
With the grades.
And and I'm like, wow, okay. So like this hits you.
Yeah.
Like this one stings, because he's like in the NFL, it was even hard for me.
Sure.
Because that's all players think about is their grade.
Their PFF grade.
I mean, even in training camp, people walk up to him, hey, what's your Madden rating?
Yeah.
Like, can you believe you're a 72?
Yeah.
Like, you think you should be a 78 or 70? Like, whether that, like, internally, like, hurts the player or not. Like, though he just is so real.
Yeah.
He's so real with you and in the moment. And the best thing he said yesterday out of everything is don't yell at the solution. Think about that. Rest with that. There should be no one yelling at the solution.
Let's get back to that. And when we come back, we're gonna talk about that a little bit more, and we're gonna get to our AMA with me and Andrew here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I struggle with, you can tell I'm always going to defend my players and my coaches. I struggle with the fact that, like, these players are here to get Nebraska football over the hump, because it hasn't been over the hump, and these coaches are here. Like, when I go in for my heart exam and my doctor tells me I have calcium, I don't yell at the heart doctor. You know what I'm saying? I don't yell at the guy trying to fix the problem. So why would anyone say anything bad about the kids that are out there playing to try to get us back to a bowl game? Why would anyone say anything about the coaches that are trying? Like, that's crazy to me. So I see the impact it has on young people. It's devastating to them. It really is. Most of my job is about, hey guys, ignore the noise, ignore it, ignore what people are saying about you. And that, I'm having to do that a little bit in recruiting sometimes too. Like, coach, I don't know. Do the recruits need to hear everyone talk about that we're not good at this and not good at that? I don't know. So it's the job. It's challenging. I relish this. I'm not complaining about it. Everybody has a job to do. Fans have, but I'm proud of our players. And I say this so that they hear it, their parents hear it. And a PFF score does not determine who they are. Ethan Piper's out there playing with a broken hand. Right? He's pass protected number 4 from Illinois, who's going to be a first-round draft pick with a broken hand, and we won the game. I'd hug the guy, not grade him.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla. That's Andrew Rogers. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, also on ESPN Tri-Cities as well. Really interesting stuff there from Coach Rhule.
The back half of that is super important to hear too.
Yeah, the PFF grades there, and
I'm just relishing at the knowing what the job is.
Yes,
like he's not making an excuse,
right?
And the point that I made going into the break was, he's not a fan of those yelling at the solution, and I like just that term, like, because there is a ton of people out there. And he's like, we're trying, we're building something. Like, you don't build a house in 6 weeks. Well, maybe you can, unless you're on Extreme Home Makeover. You have like 300 people.
Or have you seen those
like
3D printed houses with the concrete? Those get done in like 2
maybe
weeks.
You can. But like, he understands what comes with the territory. Yeah. This job and the territory it comes with is you will take on a lot of criticism. It's like our jobs, everybody's job, really. But especially
in like public facing jobs,
and media personalities, you have to figure out how to combat it. How do you do that? When I got attacked on like Twitter for something I said on the show, or there were people in Omaha that would go to hockey games and they would be keyboard warriors. Yeah. And I could list off 3 right now. I'm not going to name blast them, but I could. Yeah. And they would always be like, "Oh, get this guy out of here, X, Y, and Z reason." And it's how do you block out the noise? How I blocked it out, I just put them on mute. Right. Sure. I didn't need to see it. Yeah. I didn't want to see it. So I just muted those people, because what they did is not going to affect my work. It's kind of what Coach Rhule is saying with all of this, right? Not only with social media and just, things that you hear, because every every college athlete has one of these in front of their face all the time, but it's also what they hear in public and you know, public reaction and things like that is how you block out that noise. My way was muting it.
Sure.
That's why he says stay off of Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, let me coach my team and players don't fall into the cesspool that may be, you know, right in front of your face.
And also, I think, and for the most part, right, I think the vast majority of the fan base, even when they're critical, do it out of a place of caring, right? There are a handful of people that are toxic and hateful and all these things, right? And they obviously cross lines, and that's pretty easy to tell. But most of the time when people are critical, myself included, it's critical of on-field play, right? And the reason
you're not critical of the person.
No, you're critical of what's happening on the football field. They might be terrific people. I don't know. I don't know any of the players in a way that I would feel comfortable even discussing who they are as people, just because I don't know.
Stop lying. You hang out with Heinrich Harburg every day.
Me and H squared are like this. No, but you know, it's one of those things where I actually prefer it that way, because then I can just talk about the on-field stuff and not have, like, the thing that I hated the most was when I started finding things out about Scott Frost or hearing things about Scott Frost, things that had nothing to do with football, but were obviously, in my opinion,
because then you disliked him for the human.
Well, not just that,
versus the coach,
but also it tainted my view of him, right? And so even if he had started to be successful, I would have had a really hard time rooting for him because of some of the things I had heard that were going on around this behind the scenes. And listen, there were rumors and innuendos and stuff that I couldn't report on because it was secondhand from a secondhand source or whatever, but they lined up with a lot of the things I was seeing, and that started to really bother me. And it did kind of tinge how I talked about him. And I think rightfully so, because I don't think you could hear the things that everybody's heard now and think that he was going to be able to do a good job, right? That's not the case with any of the players. When I'm talking about a player, I'm only talking about what I see on the football field. And so I think that the kind of the disconnect between what Coach Rhule's saying and what a lot of fans see is he says, don't get mad at the solution, right? I think what fans see is, hey, maybe that player isn't the solution, because we're looking at just the on-field performance. We're not looking at, hey, this guy's playing through an injury, or this guy is an incredible locker room presence, or this guy is building the culture we need right now. You know, like there's this, and
that's a real thing. Fans just don't believe what you believe.
Well, and it's not just that they don't believe, it's they don't know, right? They're not in the locker room. They're not in the building where they can see.
But even if they have an injury or not healthy, they may say fully healthy. I still don't believe what you believe, fair, right?
But it's impossible for them to see the culture, the leadership, the teammate, stuff that happens off the field, right? And right now, I genuinely believe, not that Matt Rhule's not trying to win games, but I genuinely believe that stuff is as important, if not more important, to Coach Rhule as the on-field stuff. Like, he wants you to be competent on field. He doesn't want you to make mistakes. He wants you to play football the right way and do what you're asked. But for the future of this program, he talks constantly about building slowly and building a foundation and things like that. All the other stuff to him right now in year one is just as important as the on-field stuff, because that's the stuff that lasts. The leadership, the being a good teammate, the building the culture. That is the stuff that can transcend your time at a certain institution, because you've left a legacy for younger players to take up that mantle, right? You could have Ethan Piper be an All-American at his spot, right? That legacy doesn't filter down. If he's a really good player and he's a great leader and a great teammate and sets a great culture, that's what filters down to everybody else in the offensive line room, right? That's more important in year one for Matt Rhule than having an All-American in Ethan Piper, if he ended up being that good, right? So that, to me, is where there's a little bit of a disconnect, where fans talk about things one way and Coach Rhule is going to talk about it in another way. That's why the grades don't mean much. Certainly right now, maybe not ever for him, but year one, those grades don't mean a whole hell of a lot to him. And that's okay.
But they won't matter to him ever.
No. But I think his internal grades will matter more to him down the road.
Well, yeah, because he uses PFF for more things than just those grades.
Yeah,
right.
He
even said, the film and the way that they break things down by play. He's like, I'm a stat nerd too. I love that.
It can be super helpful.
There's things that he likes. There's things that he dislikes. But yes, it's you kind of have to even out the scale, right? The scale is, yes, you want development. Yes, you want this foundation. And the other side of the scale is you want to win now. I remember having this conversation with JR, my long lost Uncle Johnny Rogers. And he was so dead set on win now because of, like, the transfer portal, anybody can come in and just you can still win now. Why worry about development when you live in this new age of college football? But at the same time, I'm still on the foundational side of things where you still need, not only do you need to establish something for these players to grow, because yes, they could leave at any point, but the goal is to make them not
want to leave.
Right.
And he talked about that yesterday
right.
too.
The goal is to not like put pressure on them to strive for more, but like, the expectation is to, hey, you've reached this level, you will play, you will do big things. But the foundation isn't just that. The foundation is getting back to a point of relevance. How Nebraska football can be something again.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not always about, hey, you win now because of the transfer portal, these guys, that guys, whatever. And it's not always just about the development aspect. It's just about pouring something that is sustainable.
Yeah.
And getting back to a state of sustenance. So now you take that to the next level and to the next level. And if you aren't making that progress, then you look for a different solution. And so that's why I still kind of lean to the left side of the scale versus like, hey, win now, transfer portal, because you want the win now and the foundation, right? That's, if you could have the best of both worlds, that's what you want.
But if you have to pick one, and sometimes you do.
If I had to pick one,
you pick foundation.
Oh, if I had to pick one, I'd want to pick win now. Let's all win. But I'm looking at a long-term result.
Right. If you're looking at, hey, I want Nebraska to be good for the next decade.
Well, you have to build something to where other people out there see that you've built something special.
Because what if listen, I know the transfer portal.
So it's like the Michigan blue plan.
Yeah, it's the Michigan blueprint. And he said that, right? He's literally pointed to Michigan as the goal, right? But look at the teams that, and we're going to get to our AMA here in just a minute, but look at the teams that have gone the transfer portal route in college football, right? Sometimes it leads into success. Michigan State is a good example in year 2 under Mel
Keon
Tucker.
Coleman.
That helps, yeah, right? But that was a huge transfer heavy team, and they won that year, and then everybody left, and where have they been since then? Right?
Well, a lot of times when you leave a team, it's not because you're really good and you're looking for a new start, right?
Yeah, the type of
if you're really good, you're probably still on that team playing.
Unless you're going like a Cam Ward from Washington State that went from Incarnate Word, where he was balling out and that was not a high enough level for him.
Sam Hartman from Wake Forest to Notre Dame.
Yes.
Look, there are players that do that, but majority of the people in the portal are not fantastic football players. Like, they're great players because they got to a college and they're playing the sport. But if they were fantastic, they would not have left that team. They would be on that team. They'd be a starter. They could be a starter on another team.
Yeah.
Like MJ Sherman is fantastic for the Huskers. He came over from Georgia, but he played a lot of special teams. Like, he was unable to take that next step versus the other guys in that room. So he made it his ability here. Those people work in the transfer portal. The Sam Hartmans work in the transfer portal. We look at Eric Gilbert, though, that had all the promise in the world with stars next to his name, and he left schools because
he had problems.
It was personal problems.
Yeah.
And like, you get a lot of that in the portal too. So the portal isn't just this great place full of sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows where you just pluck one out and it's going to be perfect. It's not.
You have to choose wisely.
More times than not, it's not perfect.
Yeah. Well, and it depends a ton on the reason a guy's in the portal, because sometimes you have coaching changes and you're like, hey, I want to move on. My coach moved on. Totally understandable, right? Sometimes you have guys that,
or you want to take that next step.
Yeah. Hey, I've outplayed the level that I'm currently at. I didn't have these offers coming out of high school. I want to challenge myself at a higher level. That totally makes sense. Those are guys that I would bet on. And then you've got guys that had a lot of promise that maybe they got buried on a depth chart or whatever. Guys like MJ Sherman, who you're like, hey, I contributed. I was a good teammate, but I'd like a bigger opportunity. That makes a ton of sense. But there's a lot of guys in the portal that either have never learned how to persevere through adversity and learn how to fight for a spot and things like that, because they've been the man the entire time they've ever played the game, right? Or you've got guys that got in a little bit of trouble. I'm not saying you should write all those guys off, but you have to be careful which guys you take out of the portal, right? And I think Coach Rhule's been, not just with the portal, but with recruits too. You heard him talk about it yesterday. Hey, I want guys that really want to be here. I want guys because we're going to ask a lot of them. It's like we're going to love you a lot, but we're going to demand a lot as well. You don't want guys that are wishy-washy about you if you're going to demand a lot of them. You need guys that are 100% in. And so I think you have to be really careful with the transfer portal if you're going to coach that way. And I mean, we're seeing it,
and
right?
that's why Coach Rhule isn't.
Yeah.
That's why he is dead set on development.
Yeah. And is he going to take guys out of the portal? Absolutely. Right. But he's going to be choosy about the guys he takes out of the portal.
The last thing I'll say too is there's two guys in a scenario. One guy is handed $1 million. The other guy had to work 10 years for $1 million. Mm-hmm. Which guy would you rather have? Actually, I'll make it easier. One guy was handed $1 million. One guy had to work 2 years to get to $1 million. Which guy would you rather have?
I'd rather have the worker.
You'd rather have the guy that took all this life experience at the same time to get to somewhere. But you had to develop to get to that point, right?
Absolutely.
You didn't just come out of high school with your sheer natural talent and hand the $1 million and you're going to be this outstanding player. Yes, and in some cases you are because you're going to be the best of the best. But unless you work hard for something, I would rather have the second of the two.
That's part of the reason I love a guy like Joe Burrow, right? Like, yeah, he transferred, but he worked. He stayed there. He tried to win the job at Ohio State. He was stuck behind first-round quarterbacks.
Battled through adversity.
He battled through it. He gave himself another opportunity, battled through, was never really considered the guy, and ends up being in the position he's in now. That dude has worked for everything he's ever gotten. That's why I like a guy like Brock Purdy, who's a total afterthought, right? Was third string on the depth chart, has battled through everything he's gotten. That dude wasn't a 4 or 5 star coming out of high school. That dude, he went to Iowa State. 4-star quarterbacks don't go to Iowa State.
Right.
Like, he had to work for everything he got. And
other than Hunter Deckers.
We'll just forget about him. But you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you want the worker because those are the guys that you can count on long term.
It's just all about maturity.
Yeah.
Right. I would rather have an athlete in any sport that is super mature because they had to take the rocky highway to get to where they are rather than the one that flew in the fast lane on the new pavement.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears a little bit here.
Let's do it.
Let's
we can carry this over into 8:30 as well.
We're going to do our AMA, and that's brought to you by Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's has been in business in Omaha for over 25 years, family owned and operated. They've got the latest technology to work on whatever make and model you've got, and that has led them to being first place best of Omaha for 18 years running. Another factor in that, they always give back with every vehicle repaired. They give back to the community. Go check it out at dingmans.com. All right.
Right there.
Andrew and I have a little AMA for each other. We're probably going to carry this into the next segment as well. But here we go. You want to go first or want me to go first?
It doesn't matter.
All right, I'll go first. This kind of nice little transition here goes in from what we're talking about with Matt Rhule a little bit. He said in that press conference yesterday, he goes, Iowa and Wisconsin was a beautiful football game to him. I personally disagree. What is your preferred version of football? I.e., what is your beautiful football game look like?
The one that the Bears win. No.
Unfortunately, no one's ever seen that.
One that nobody gets hurt in. No.
Stylistically.
Yeah, that's not a beautiful football game.
No, not for me.
Even as somebody that I haven't coached as long as Coach Rhule, but even that's somebody that's coached baseball, like a beautiful game to me isn't that, right?
Yeah.
A pitching duel is a beautiful game in baseball, right? But you're getting it on both sides. It's not really like
Wisconsin, Iowa felt more about inept offenses than it did great defenses. And those defenses are good. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But the ineptitude of the offenses was very much on
baseball is
display.
just a different sport than football altogether. But a beautiful game to me is something that goes down to the wire.
Yeah.
It's not something that scores 45 points. Both teams aren't scoring 45 points for me.
Yeah.
A beautiful football game is you don't turn the ball over, right? You have
clean football.
You have a very clean football game, and it probably ends somewhere around the 31-24 mark.
Sure.
Right? Where, you win by a touchdown, or, you win by let's do it because Andrew loves kickers. You win by a game-winning field goal. Like, that's a beautiful football game to me. It's not that, because that is a game you turn off.
Yes, that was ugly.
Whether you really, really enjoy like defensive football or not, that's a game you turn off because there's other games on TV that are just more entertaining to watch at that moment.
Yeah.
And that's where the difference comes with a pitching duel. You watch a pitching duel because you're like, oh my gosh, nobody's scoring and these guys are just pumping and this is actually fun because you have two of the best pitchers and, one guy maybe throwing a no-hitter and like there's something that to reach for in a game like that. There's nothing to reach for in a game that ends 15-6. There's absolutely nothing. It's not a beautiful football game. That is the only knock that I have to say about Coach Rhule, but he sees things a lot differently than I do.
Oh,
so
sure.
I'll let him call whatever is beautiful as long as the Huskers keep winning football games.
Yeah, this is a beauty is in the eye of the beholder type situation, right? Mine is probably listen, it's not a perfect football game, but something kind of stylistically of like that Washington-Oregon game. Like Oregon made mistakes for sure in terms of some of their fourth down decisions, stuff like that. So it's not perfect, but pretty high-level execution on both sides. I felt like that game was decided mostly
It's a very good football game.
Yeah,
back and forth. Back and forth is great football.
Washington took a lead, like 29-18, I think. Oregon comes back, takes a lead. Washington ends up winning. There's a missed field goal at the end that would have sent it to overtime. Like, that was a really good football game.
And, like, stylistically, passing isn't all it for me.
No.
Like, I want a little bit of a mix and run, and I want a little bit of mixing and passing.
That's why that game was good, because Oregon was run heavy. Washington took some shots. It was a lot. I thought that.
But even Oregon, like they would have their pass plays too.
They got balance.
Like they run the ball extremely well, but they have really good balance on the offensive side. But if you're throwing the ball like you were in that Oklahoma State Kansas game, like that's not overly fun either, because all you're doing is scoring points. And then again, you're way too high for me now.
Yeah,
like that's too many points for me in a beautiful football game. Iowa, Wisconsin's too low of points in a beautiful.
I need some resistance.
Game. I need something in between, and I need a little. Like wow factor, shock factor at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a really terrific football game, and that's kind of right up my alley. Is that Washington Oregon game?
All right, my question to you.
I agree. That was a fantastic game.
My question to you: slay, stay, go away.
Okay.
The 2004 Red Sox World Series.
Okay.
The 1982 49ers Super Bowl win.
Okay.
And the 1995 Husker National Championship. Slay, stay, go away. This is another form of what? Bed, wed, behead?
Yeah.
And if we got even like deeper into the explicit category, you know where I'm trying to go.
So slay is like my favorite one?
Yes.
Okay. So my favorite one is definitely 04 Red Sox.
Okay.
Stay is 95 Huskers. And I'll let go of the 82 49ers because I just wasn't alive and don't remember it.
Oh, man.
You should have gone 94 49ers.
All right, we'll change it. We'll go 94 49ers. Are you still kicking them off the ledge?
Still letting the 49ers go on that one.
The reason I brought up 82 was because like that was the football game. That was the catch in the NFC Championship game.
That's the Dwight Clark. That one just doesn't mean as much to me because I wasn't there. I didn't remember it. Like the other two I have very specific memories of, so they're really special to me. 82 I don't really have as many memories of. I loved that 94 49ers team, but the 95 Huskers and the 04. I mean, the 04 Red Sox is probably my favorite sports thing that's ever happened. So, like that's
not mine.
Sorry about that. I'm not really, but listen,
I remember
you got one 2 years later. You're fine.
In Florida. Oh, stop it.
You're fine.
Stop it. I was in Florida watching that whole series just fall apart.
Yeah.
I remember I was in a hotel room and we weren't in like the nicest of hotel rooms.
Sure.
I remember the TV being, and this was 04. So there weren't like flat screens or anything, but I remember the box TV close to the ground watching Johnny Damon just whack one to right field. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And I'm only 7 at the time. And like the fact that I have such a vivid memory of that moment is pretty crazy.
Well, that's about the same age I was for the 95 Huskers. I was about 7, 8 years old. And I have like vivid memories of not only the championship game, but that team throughout the season. Is like I've got it's about that age, I feel like 6, 7, 8, where you start having like really specific memories.
Sure.
Number 2 for me. Would you rather see, we've got a minute here, would you rather see NFL players playing flag football in the Olympics or MLB players playing baseball in the Olympics?
NFL players playing flag football. Absolutely. Because we already have the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah.
Where Major League Baseball players thrive.
I need Tyreek Hill on the go route in flag football.
And don't get me wrong, like I still want to see college baseball players as our Olympic team.
Yeah.
Like I think that would be awesome. And I think that would be fair for the rest of the league too.
Yeah, for the rest of the world.
Yeah. As long as we get every college baseball player, and like if you have, Hispanic descent
or the Japanese guy
descent,
that is coming over
like
to play
whatever,
college ball.
he has to play for the U.S. team. though.
Okay, so if you play college baseball in the U.S.,
have to be.
That's your allegiance.
Yes.
Or you don't play.
Right.
Okay.
Because I don't want the World Baseball Classic to happen with college baseball players, because college baseball players come from everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you have foreign exchange students all the time in college.
Absolutely.
You're just coming here for opportunity.
Yeah.
Not just the Japanese baseball player, but from like the Dominican and wherever. So, yes, I love that you want to play for your ancestry.
Yeah.
But if you're playing in the Olympics and you're in college, you are definitely playing for the U.S. team.
All right, we will continue this on the other side. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Big Ten West will be gone next year anyway, so I was a young coach, because I don't want you guys to think I'm always just like coach speak. I was a young coach, head coach at Temple, and I sat down at a table at the retreat with all the American Conference coaches were there. George O'Leary, who I really looked up to, was there, and UCF was rolling at the time, and he was going to become the AD. And I was like, "Yeah, coach, we play." I forget what year it was. I was like, "Man, we play Penn State, but then we got Cincinnati," and he was like, "Maddie." He's like, "Just play them one at a time." And you hear that. But the teams I thought were going to be really good that year actually were pretty down. And the teams I thought were going to be down that year were really pretty good. And so I think we face good teams each week. I think it's a battle each week. I just think there's always the narrative out there. Like, people watch the Iowa-Wisconsin game and say it's a bad football game or it's an ugly football game. I think it's a beautiful defensive football game. And, I see a lot of teams that scored a lot of points early in the season in games this weekend, not quite scores quite as many points as the year gets on and people catch up and it gets a little colder. So, I was on its way to having another great year. And people are making a big deal about how many points they score. They're scoring one more than their opponent most games. So I think I don't know anything about the Big Ten West other than I'm facing each one each year. And after the year, I'll probably have a better feel for, kind of who everyone is. And then we'll shuffle it up and we'll be going to the West Coast. And I'll do my best to figure that out.
Still not beautiful, Maddie.
Nope, still not great football. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities as well. I'm Ravi, Lulla, that's Andrew Rogers. As we continue on Hurrdat Sports Radio AMA, we are brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. It is the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. It's the only place. Kiosks, they've got your sportsbook tellers. You can build your bets on the app. You got to go place them in person. You can build them on the app, scan a QR code, and just place your wager right there.
Avoid the slot machines when you find your way there. Sometimes the slot machines will get you.
They just suck you in.
Shane knows from personal experience.
They got a tractor beam. That's the Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. All right.
So I know you want to get back to your Q&A here, but real quick, based on that clip that we had from Rhule, is Big Ten West football beautiful?
No, it's completely different though, because Big Ten West football has always been built like this, built on running the football down somebody's throat, built on good defense.
Coach Rhule wants to get back to.
But it's still not beautiful by any means. Well, it's just it's the identity of the Big Ten.
And listen, I don't have a problem. Like, I think Michigan plays beautiful football.
Big Ten East.
Yeah, but they're kind of a Big Ten West style. They just do it at a really high level, like line play, defense, running, and then they sprinkle in a more dynamic quarterback than anybody in the Big Ten West has, right? That kind of elevates them from being really solid to being a national title contender. But it's really a Big Ten West style team, just at the highest possible level. So it's not the style that I have a problem with. It's the fact that Iowa's totally inept on offense. Okay, like that's not beautiful football. They are bad on offense. Wisconsin has really struggled at times on offense, especially after Tanner Mordecai went out, and it's not like he was lighting the world on fire this year either. So I don't have a problem with the defense and running game. Like, that's what Nebraska was built on when they won their national titles, and I get it looks different because the option and things like that. But so I don't have a problem with that style as long as you're executing it at a really high level. That's the difference to me right now. Is Iowa, Wisconsin, they're not executing that style at a high level. They're just executing it at slightly better level than their opponent right now.
See, I don't know if I can even say that Michigan is what every other Big Ten West team could be if they were executing at a high level.
Well, they have more talent.
But for one, yes, for sure. But I don't know if I can sit back and say that that's what I would see if Iowa was really good, if Wisconsin was really good, if Nebraska was really good, because I think it's a little different. And, it's wishful thinking to want to be that.
Sure.
But I don't know if all Big Ten West football would look like Michigan if they had the talent that Michigan has.
Well, probably not, because Harbaugh's a better coach than a lot of those guys.
Sure. But it's all different like that.
Yeah.
But
I just mean
I'm just trying to wrap my head around that style, though. Because yes, that is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to look like Michigan. I just don't know if teams would actually look like Michigan if they had the talent that Michigan had.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to coaching at that point. I just mean purely stylistically, Michigan is the highest form that we have right now of the defense running the football as your base for. And honestly, it's kind of what
Oregon will do a great job of that when they come next year.
Oregon does a great job of it. Their base is really running the football, line play, and defense.
Now, Bucky Irving he's so versatile and won't be on that team next year.
Yeah,
so
neither will Bo Nix.
Right. So who knows what the carryover effect
you're going to have some turnover there. But honestly, before Lane Kiffin went to Alabama, this is what Alabama was. They looked a lot more like Michigan than they do now, right? They looked way more defense first, line play first, functional quarterback play, and running a ton of football. I mean, you're talking about your Mark Ingrams, your Derrick Henrys, those guys, and your TJ Yeldons, like those guys that were kind of those were the stars of the offense, not the quarterback. I mean, you had your what was the guy's name? Greg McElroy, guys like that kind of running the offense. Those guys weren't special quarterbacks. Those were your Cade McNamara versions of quarterback like Michigan had. So I think there is a way where that can be beautiful football, but it's really hard to attain. Like, it's not an easy goal.
Yeah, beautiful football just at the end of the day is clean.
Yeah, just well executed.
It's just clean. And if you play really good defense, like Penn State right now, and I can't wait to talk to Gross because that's a beautiful football team.
Absolutely.
All around. They're number one in total defense. They air the ball out very, very well. Aller is perfect on the season away from the turnover category. And, they have a good running attack too. It's not like they have a guy that's already ran for 800 yards, but they have a good running attack, but they just do a really good job of dominating opponents, whether they're good or inferior. Like, they haven't played a ranked team yet, and I get that, but
we'll find out about them.
There is that. Let's get into this before we run out of time here, because I keep just rambling on. I got a question for you because it's my turn, right, to ask. So Steve Smith called Jerry Jeudy a jag, just another guy over the weekend, not a star.
Yep.
Any sport, Ravi, who is a jag to you?
Ooh, so I assume we're going for kind of a hot take here, like somebody everybody else looks at as a high profile guy. I'm probably going to go NBA here. I really feel I'm trying to think. There's a couple guys that come to mind. I think I'm going to go Paul George.
Okay.
Because, like, yes, he puts up good numbers. Yes, he's a good athlete, like kind of like Jerry Jeudy, but on the teams that he's been the star of, they've never done anything. Like, they've never been special. I don't know that he's ever made it out of the second round of the playoffs as the best player on a team. Like, he's kind of just another dude to me. And pretty talented, maybe could be better than he is, but as far as how his career's gone, just another guy.
All right.
What about you?
Oh, man, a jag. I wish you wouldn't have turned it around on me. I'm so excited to ask you this question because it's such a loaded question.
It is. It really is.
And you can really look at it, a ton of different ways. I will go. Because I think of fantasy football here because I draft a lot of guys. Yeah. And it's not much of a hot take, but he was drafted in the first round. He was there to replace AJ Brown. Like, Treylon Burks is a jag.
Oh yeah.
Like, he's a unanimous jag though. He's not somebody that is super
not like a
hot take.
Yeah.
If I'm going for overall hot take, oh man, let me just climb down the league here. Carry the 2.
Catch a niner in there.
Yeah, something like that.
You can see the smoke coming out of Andrew's ears here.
Well, I'm just kind of I'm calculating like the AFC West,
I can
and then
see
I'm
you,
going
like,
to the
going
AFC
through.
South,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to the AFC North.
It's a tough one.
Najee Harris is a Jag.
Oh, okay.
I think that it's not overly hot,
No.
but it's hot enough to be like, huh?
I think people
After he started with Pittsburgh, and he had a huge year. I think he ran like 300 times or something like that. He was super, super talented. And then where has he gone?
Yeah.
Well, because it hasn't been injuries.
No.
He's still on the football field.
Yeah,
he just isn't running the ball very well.
No.
And so right now I just look at him as a Jag, somebody that was highly touted and showed that in year one. But is it an offensive line problem? Is it a him problem? What is it?
Yeah.
I just kind of look at him right now as a Jag. He's somebody that you fire him up in starting lineups. He's drafted and he's in the 20s to 30s when you draft him in fantasy football, yet he doesn't play like a 20 to 30s player.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I probably wouldn't have thought of him, but he he probably qualifies. I don't know how hot of a take that is, but I think it's a guy people think better of than his actual production.
But is Najee Harris like compatible with Jerry Jeudy?
Probably. Probably in the same neighborhood as Jerry Jeudy.
I would think he may have a leg up on Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, I forget Jerry Jeudy exists, so that until Steve Smith said
Sky Moore is a Jag.
Oh, for sure.
An absolute Jag.
Maybe not even that. Coming up next, we're going to talk
to Jaguar.
Mike Gross. He covers Penn State. We're going to get into this week's big game against Ohio State here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number two here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, ESPN Tri-Cities, AM 590, ESPN Omaha. I'm Ravi, Lulla. That's Andrew Rogers, and we are brought to you by Rockbrook Camera. They are not just trying to sell you a camera. They're trying to help you become the best photographer you can be, whatever that means for your life, whether you're trying to be a professional photographer or just capturing your memories and sharing them with friends and family. They'll support you after the sale with unlimited things like classes and other things to get you acquainted with your new equipment. They've got the latest technology. You can check it all out at rockbrookcamera.com, 168th and West Center in Omaha, or 70th and Pioneer in Lincoln. Joining us now to preview the biggest game in college football this week, Mike Gross of Lancaster Online. He covers Penn State football. They are facing off against Ohio State. Mike, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
We are doing well. I guess, what is the just general feeling about going into this week? You've got a top 10 matchup, supremacy maybe in the Big Ten East on the table. What is the general vibe, especially coming off of kind of a weird midseason game against UMass? Mm-hmm. Now you're going from one end of the spectrum to the other. What's the feeling around Pennsylvania right now?
Well, calling it weird. That's a very kind way to say it. Yeah, that was an epic matchup, wasn't it? It's nice if you're UMass that you get $1.6 million to come get your head kicked in. But anyway, this is, people have been pointing to this specific day for a year now in Penn State. I don't think the fan base has ever been bigger and ever been more rabid, and the expectations are super high. I think this stretch of games here, from here to the finish line, is seen as a referendum on James Franklin. So it's you hate to engage in hyperbole, but this is a really big game. This is huge for Penn State, and it's huge for Ohio State too.
Mike, I wanted to ask you about that. You mentioned the referendum on James Franklin. Obviously, the only two losses last year were to Ohio State and Michigan. He's struggled in these games against the elite of the Big Ten East. Overall, he's been very successful at Penn State, but it does seem like there's a little bit of tension, maybe consternation between his relationship with maybe fans and even people in the university, with his inability to kind of get into that same category as Ohio State and Michigan. Is that an accurate read on the situation?
Well, I don't know about within the university. I think right now with the current AD, Patrick Kraft, the current president, I think there's pretty good alignment about what they're doing in football, and I think they're pretty behind Franklin. As far as the fans, and I mean, if they lose on Saturday, you're going to be hearing it again. He can't win the big one, and he's a good recruiter and he's a good enthusiasm builder. But the next step of being able to do it against the true elite, he's fallen short. I don't know if that's 100% fair. And I do think that he's closer now. Penn State's roster, overall depth, I think he's closer now to the real top shelf of the sport than he's been at any other time in his tenure. So, hey, it's kind of like I think this 2-year window with some of the second-year players they have who are going to be here next year, I think this 2-year window is really critical to the way he's going to be remembered and critical to his tenure going forward.
Mike, it's been 6 straight years without a win against Ohio State. With where both teams are currently at this season and the injuries lingering on the Buckeyes side, do you think that's an advantage for Penn State in this game?
I think that's a small advantage. Yeah, and I would also say this: Penn State is unbelievably fresh. Their defense has been on the field for I saw snap counts the other day. I think they're second fewest in the country. And when you consider how many people they play on defense, they play 19 or 20 kids on defense. It's hard to believe how healthy and fresh they appear to be at this point in the season. And that's got to be, I think maybe it's a disadvantage that they haven't been in a close game. The Penn State hasn't been in a close game, even going back to the middle of last season, which obviously is a function of the schedule. But you're asking Drew Aller and a lot of other people who have never really been in this spot before to perform, to make big plays if they're going to get it done on Saturday.
Mike, they may not have been in a close game, but the big knock on Penn State this year is, have they really played any team that's worthy of where Penn State is in the rankings? So do you think about that at all when it comes to the conversation of, well, they haven't been in a close game, but have they actually played anyone this year?
Yeah, I think, sure, that's part of it. I do think that what they did to Iowa was pretty impressive because against, Iowa's defense, Iowa's offense is just brutal, as you guys know, but their defense is pretty good, and they were able
100%.
to really control. They were really able to control that game on both sides of the ball. They impressed me there. But their schedule has not been great. Let's be honest. It's going to get a lot tougher, but it hasn't been much to this point.
We're talking with Mike Gross, Lancaster Online. He covers Penn State. Mike, I'm curious about how the reception of Drew Aller in his first time starting for Penn State. How has that been, just the way he's played? I guess, how would you evaluate his play halfway through the season?
I think he's played well. I think people were expecting and I know they were hoping to be just blown away by this guy. And he was going to be a Heisman candidate right away. And that hasn't happened. He's been very careful with the football. He does not have a turnover in his college career, including the 100 or so snaps that he played last year. Week 1, West Virginia said, okay, this rookie quarterback making his first start, let's see if he can throw the ball over our head. They dared him to do it, and he did it. And everybody since then has taken the opposite tack. You're not going to throw it over our head. And he has taken a lot of, take the hot route, take the underneath route. So he's been good, but they definitely want to push the ball down the field a little more than they have so far. And they're going to have to against Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, you're not going to do 15 play drives of 4 yards at a pop and beat those kind of teams. So it's a big Saturday for Drew Aller too.
Mike, not that UMass is anything to brag about, because as we know, we already talked about that a little bit coming in, but good teams show their dominance against inferior opponents, and that's nothing to sleep on. Defensively, especially, seeing as the Nittany Lions are number 1 in total defense, what makes those 11 guys so special?
They're really athletic. They're really fast. They have a lot of depth. It's more than 11. And they have a coordinator who's really well suited to this group because he puts them in position to wreak havoc. I think like last week, 14 tackles for loss and 7 sacks. And they've also been very good at limiting other teams on a per-play basis. It's not one of those gambling defenses that will give up a big play once in a while. At least so far it hasn't been. And the really intriguing matchup on Saturday, I think, is Ohio State's wide receivers, assuming they're healthy, maybe the best group in the country, against Penn State's cornerbacks, who are maybe the best group in the country. Really elite. Penn State is really elite at that position group. So those guys battling each other, I think, will be fun to watch, sort of game within the game kind of thing.
Mike, obviously Drew Aller was kind of an unknown coming into the season, but we've already talked about him, so let's take him off the table. Has there been a newcomer that you've been particularly surprised or impressed by in terms of how they performed halfway through this season?
A guy that's emerged a little bit. He's not a newcomer. He's been there a while.
Sure.
But is Daquan Hardy, who you played the radio call of his punt return on. He had 2 punt returns for a touchdown. One of them was the first time he ever returned a punt in college. He's been their nickel corner for a couple of years, and he's been excellent in that role. But Franklin said after the game, we kind of handed him the punt returner's job. We're trying to create some more explosive plays, and he's maybe a guy who could do that. And other than that, newcomers, I mean, they have a lot of kids who are going to be good, who have showed up on special teams so far.
Mm-hmm.
Some true freshmen. There's a safety named King Mack who's been very good. But as far as somebody that's really out of the blue on right now, killing it on offense or defense, not really. They've had they have enough experience, although they are fairly young. And again, it's depth. It's depth especially on defense. They don't have anybody with great tackling numbers or anything like that on defense because they just play so many guys and come at you in droves.
Mike, ESPN predictions have Ohio State pulling out a close win at home by a spread of 5 points. If you were making a prediction on this game, all bias aside, what is the final score?
Are you all bias aside?
All bias aside.
Very well phrased. That's good. No, I think I like Ohio State a little. I think Penn State is going to win one of these 2 games this year. And at the beginning of the year, I would have said this was the one because I think it's a more favorable matchup. But the way the season is playing out now, I don't know. I feel like I think the not having been in any close game, I really do think that's a concern. So it's an extremely tough call. I'm going to go Buckeyes by a hair, maybe by 3 or 4.
Mike Gross, Lancaster Online. We appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Mike.
You got it, fellas.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Yeah, I watched the 2021 game and I watched last year's game a lot. I watched both those games a lot, right? I thought what Coach Frost and the offensive staff did 2 years ago was phenomenal. But Martinez was amazing. I mean, a lot of great things happened. Played great defense. Obviously, last year was a hard-fought battle back and forth. But they have a new defensive coordinator, right? There's just not a lot of things that translate. So it's all kind of new. So those are more like off-season studies for me. I get in the game week. I usually try to go back and watch personnel. Coach Vokalek is there, who was here, so obviously he'll know our personnel. So I try to go back and watch their players versus our guys a little bit, but for the most part now I have 6 games on them versus really good competition, 2 top 25 teams that they've played. They're just a lot like us.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Andrew Rogers dancing for some reason.
Just the shoulders. Can't stop it.
We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for this third hour, we are on KFOR in Lincoln as well. All of those places we are brought to you by Pratt Dental. They are here for the BioClear method. Dr. Pratt is the only dentist in Nebraska that provides that service. Located in North Platte, the BioClear method and modern smile design can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments. Give Pratt Dental a call, 308-221-2800. We are efforting our friend Mike Schaefer.
Before we go to him,
Yeah.
He's here.
I changed my pick from a Jag.
Okay.
Remember we were on that topic of
Yeah,
Jag, and
yeah,
I said Najee, and I'm like, I don't feel like great about it. I got a way better one.
Okay.
Kyle Pitts.
Oh, yeah.
Kyle Pitts is the Jag.
Super
That's my
talented.
pick.
Just a dude.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You said Schaefer's here, Shane?
Bring him in.
That is correct.
Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, what's going on, bud?
Oh, not a lot. How we doing?
Is that a baseballism hat I'm seeing you rocking there?
Oh yeah, big baseballism guy. It's one of those things where like I used to attend their concerts in a garage before they got big, sort of deal. I don't know how or why. I think I discovered them on my first like spring training trip. I was down in Scottsdale and they have like a store down there. Or I found them online. Like it was like a targeted ad before I even knew what those were. But I have quite a bit of baseballism stuff. And then I was super pumped when they started showing up at the CWS probably about 4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, so that's where I first got my stuff from.
That's your Griffey hat, right?
Yeah, so I've got a King Griffey Jr. hat like that, and then I've got the Sandlot dog hat too.
Yep, with the beast. Yep,
and then I've got a couple of their Omaha T-shirts as well that I really enjoy. So yeah, big fan. They should. Hey, Baseballism, sponsor the show. Let's go.
They might. Look, they're good to work with. They're good people.
Hey, nothing crazy about that. Hey, I asked Ravi this earlier today, Shafe, and I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to change the question around. We were talking about when Steve Smith called Jerry Jeudy a Jag, just another guy. And so I asked him who he felt was a Jag, and then he asked me who I thought was a Jag. I ultimately landed about 3 seconds ago on Kyle Pitts. You said an NBA Paul George.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you from a Big Ten perspective, who's just a Jag in the Big Ten to you?
I mean, this is probably going to fly in the face of what Jim Harbaugh was just saying, but it's JJ McCarthy. Like, I don't get fired up about him. I understand he can put up good efficiency numbers. I don't believe it. Part of it to me is I'm viewing it as this is a guy they're talking about as a first-round quarterback for next year. And I would want nothing to do with that. If you're getting him in the third or the fourth round, whatever, at that point. But investing that much draft capital in a guy who's never really asked to do that much at Michigan, and part of it is just the way that it's set up there, that he gets to sort of be a really rich guy's game manager. Like that's kind of how I view him. So if we were limiting it to the Big Ten. I'm trying to think if there's any other examples I have in years past, but part of it this year is that Big Ten lacks star power. I mean, it's just kind of sort of a conference where you have some good teams. You have some really good defensive players on Michigan. Ohio State feels like maybe the worst version of itself that it's been in a while, which is unfair because they've been a machine, but and then I'm really high on Drew Aller and Penn State, but I don't know if they're quite there yet. So to me, it's a weird, like Talia Tagovailoa is like among your biggest star names, and he's solid. But it's kind of a down year overall for the Big Ten in general, but also from top end stud talent. I guess it feels that way too, or at least marketed that way.
Yeah, I mean you've got you've got Marvin Harrison Jr. and like Braylon Allen, who are kind of bigger names, but
Braylon Allen could be in that Jag category now too.
Yeah, I mean he's been not as
he was so hyped up coming in to Wisconsin.
Can we just call Wisconsin just a program? Because that's what I would have called them before the year too.
They're a Jap.
I don't think
we'll find a better one for that.
Yeah. Let's move on to Nebraska here. Coach Rhule had some interesting thoughts, particularly about sort of, we were talking about this earlier, about the dynamics between like each sort of facet of the program. I'm going to include fans in here, right? You got fans have a job, players have a job, coaches have a job. I guess having seen multiple coaching staffs and sort of how different head coaches have dealt with the fan pressure and the outside noise and stuff like that. How did you process that, his response to that question about players staying focused on what's happening and blocking out the outside noise?
I think a lot of what Matt Rhule does, and people are going to get really mad if I make a comparison here, and it's not like a direct one-to-one, but you see other coaches do this, and I'm going to use PJ Fleck as an example. They sort of make themselves the target in a lot of ways. Like they make themselves sort of the thing that gets talked about, as opposed to all of the conversation being on the players. And I think that's more at Minnesota than it is at Nebraska. But I think what a lot of times it feels like Matt Rhule tries to do is to swallow some of the attention to allow his guys to not necessarily fly under the radar. That's hard to do here in Lincoln with as much coverage as we have for everything all the time. But to pull some of that back, because for as much media coverage as there is, it's got to be really hard to be a player and to just completely avoid it. But if you can either change the conversation or take up enough of the space that you sort of move off of the team individually, it allows them to kind of work, again, not under the radar, but with a little less attention overall. Like I think that's a strategy that he is trying to enact. So, because I feel like he feels very comfortable having just coached in the NFL that he can handle whatever criticism or whatever else is coming directed towards him. But if you can kind of protect the players a little bit of it, if you can keep them so they can work without having as much distraction, I think that's kind of the idea behind it. It's like a half-baked theory that I'm just throwing out on air right now. So feel free to completely pick it apart and then kick me in the face.
No, I'm curious because, I brought this up to Andrew earlier. How do you think you balance that, what you just sort of talked about as sort of making yourself the focus of the attention and criticism and whatever, without doing the Bo Pelini route of like vilifying the fans, right? Like that gets kind of a fine line there, right? To say, hey, don't listen to the outside noise, but the outside noise isn't poison. They're not bad people for making noise.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things Matt Rhule has going for him that Bo Pelini probably did not. For starters, Matt Rhule seems like he genuinely wants to be a head football coach with all of the facets that go with it, whereas Bo would much have preferred you just stand in front of a grease board up until when they played the game and then go play the game and then go back to the grease board. So part of it is just their personalities. Another part of it is I think Rhule genuinely appreciates all of the fan support Nebraska has, but as we've talked about many times over at this point, he also likes to manage and kind of control everything. So if he can also sort of manage how that support is enacted and try to control that to whatever degree that he can, he's going to try. And if some of that is manipulating how fans react to stuff, I wouldn't put it past him to attempt to do that. I know that sounds like it's really, I don't know what the phrase I want to use here, Machiavellian, if people know
like
what that
sinister
means.
almost.
Yes, sinister is a better word for it. And I don't mean it in those intentions. I just mean that he likes to have his touch on everything in the program. So the way the fan base reacts would be another thing that he would try to put his imprints on.
It almost feels like he's trying to coach the fan base as well.
Yeah, you guys are better with words than I am. So, yeah, I mean that's sort of like I was trying to get it to manage the not expectations, because nobody can really do that, but sort of manage the ebb and flow of week to week. Because I think the other thing you have to remember, if you're Matt Rhule right now, like you have this fan base that's just desperate for anything, right? If Nebraska beats Northwestern, it's going to get louder. If Nebraska beats Purdue, it's going to get louder. So part of it is getting on the front side of this and try to manage it a little bit and try to very much hammer home the week to week. And we've got to take care of ourselves and we can't get too big and stuff like that. Because you also know what's on the other side of it. I mean, I myself am fascinated if Nebraska is able to get to 6 wins or 7 wins. I don't know that we in the media are even prepared for what that next 9-month period during the offseason and the buildup and the hype. And
I don't know what the 3 weeks until that bowl game would be like.
Yeah, I mean, it literally might be the biggest bowl game ever played based on the buildup for it. So regardless of who it's against or if it's happening in Detroit at the Quick Lane Bowl. So, part of it to me is just trying to get ahead of some of that. I think that's just his personality.
Mhm.
Like I think he just wants his touch on everything if he can.
Shape, would we be in like, what was that after the Arizona Bowl game? With like, was that the restore the order year? Like, is that if
no.
Nebraska gets to like
Oh
7?
no.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like that.
Oh
if
yeah,
Nebraska gets to like 7 wins, is that the kind of hype we're talking about? You think?
I mean, if Nebraska were to like finish this thing out and let's see, 7, would they go 4-2 down the stretch? One of those comes at the expense of Iowa or Wisconsin. You maybe even get like a 10 to 14 point win in there. Nebraska fans are going to be feeling themselves a little bit. There's no question about it.
Best 7-win team in the country, baby. Let's go.
I mean, they're just recently were the greatest 3-9 team of all
I
time.
know.
So
what
are they going to do if they get to 7-5 is a real question to ask here.
Grease the polls. Hey, I want to. No, it's like the Philly reference here. Get your mind.
No, I know exactly what you mean. It was my Minnesota Vikings that lost in 2017 that started this whole thing. It was the city of Minneapolis where they won the Super Bowl, where they basically were unprepared for the response. So I knew what you were going with there.
Well, earlier I said a different reference with an acronym, and you guys took that the wrong way. So we got to be careful here now. Hey, as we kind of talk about this team now, Schaefer, we heard Coach say yesterday that they were able to move guys around in order to create crop for other injuries that may pop up. And based on everything you heard, I'm curious, who do you think in this offense or defense right now needs to get involved more?
Okay. It's not whether I think it has to happen. Like guys like Jalen Lloyd and Malachi Coleman are going to have to play. Jaden Doss is going to have to play because of the absence of Marcus Washington. Here's one that I would like to see more of, despite his fumble on Friday against Illinois. I thought Emmett Johnson gave Nebraska something on the inside running game that Anthony Grant was unable to do against Illinois. I've hammered this a lot in the last 2 weeks, and so I'm hoping that maybe he has like a big game against Northwestern so I can move off of it. But I was really disappointed with Anthony Grant against Illinois. It had nothing to do with the fumble. I just thought he didn't run well in a game where Nebraska should have been able to control that box, should have been able to control a little bit more in the running game. And I thought Emmett Johnson outran him on some of those carries and looked better. And so I would like to see not necessarily a 50-50 split, but more touches for Emmett Johnson, more opportunity there. I mean, he had a nice catch against Michigan where Heinrich Harburg was flushed out of the pocket and had to dump that thing off. I think it was Michigan, could have been Louisiana Tech. Who knows? You get far enough back and all bleeds together. But I would like to see more. I would like to see more Emmett Johnson. So when he was talking about different people, that was one that I had in my mind for sure. Defensively, does it even matter if it's someone unique that gets thrown out there? It's all thriving right now. They could put me out there in defense and still be okay for a possession or two. So offensively, it's really kind of Emmett Johnson at this point.
Shay, if I would have guessed you more as like a center, you got kind of a Jason Kelsey look going on there.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. My high school
is he playing with a broken hand too? What would your PFF grade be?
Can you get negative? I don't know. I've seen enough Vikings interior offensive linemen that it seems like there should be some negative grades out there. I could accomplish that. I could do what Pat Alpine did for 3 years.
We're talking with Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7. Speaking of those PFF grades, I thought it was interesting because there's something that I look at sometimes. I don't think you can put a ton of stock in them because they are imperfect, but I think for certain positions like offensive line, it can be difficult for fans that aren't either used to watching film or never coached the sport or didn't play that position to kind of evaluate offensive line play outside of, is my quarterback getting sacked a lot or whatever, or is the running back having holes to open up? So, I mean, do you think I know Coach Rhule kind of talked about the value and some of the other things PFF does, but I mean, do you think there's any value in those grades, even just from a fan perspective?
I think it's a catch-all, right? And I have to acknowledge this. I work for a company that puts out a set of numbers that people go goo goo gaga over, right? Is there a ton of value in being the 33rd best player in the country or the 32nd best player in the country? One, you get a 5-star, the other you get a 4-star. So it's kind of a, I work in an incredibly subjective industry. All of that to say, I don't put a ton of stock in in Pro Football Focus. But what it does is it catches your eye. It makes you think about the game in a slightly different way. You acknowledge that these people are subjective in what they do. Then you can just use it as one set of data. It could reinforce how you felt about things. It could completely go against how you felt about things. But it's just a set of data that someone has put together based off of the game. You can use it as you want. And so what I like about Pro Football Focus is more the snap count, more of that kind of stuff. Like that's easy, condensable information that I don't have to go figure out on my own. So I appreciate that more. But sometimes if you just view it as a snapshot of here's what the game sort of looked like based on this person's interpretation of how Nebraska played, you can get some information off of it. But I don't know that, even as someone who has spent enough time around football that I should have a better understanding of how things work. I don't know that I can sit here and tell you what a 42.9 means to me for an offensive lineman relative to Thomas Fedoni getting a 67.8. Or, there's some games, like there was a game, might have been Northern Illinois, where I don't care what the Pro Football Focus grade was. Nash Hutmacher was 100. Okay. He was 100 that day. And every Northern Illinois player would tell you as much. And they had him at like a 74. So to me, it's just a snapshot. Like we don't have to make as much out of it as sometimes we do.
Schaefer, Northwestern is 3-3, 12-point dogs this weekend.
Way too high, right? Like that just seems too high.
It is way too high. But I also don't know if they're basing that off of that Penn State game where, they play a really good defense and Northwestern got really aggressive in that game. And then it just kind of blew up in their face. So I don't know if that's kind of what Vegas is looking at. But yeah, go into that. Why do you think it's so high?
Well, I look at it. I'm not at the point where I'm comfortable if Nebraska is a double-digit favorite if I'm a gambler. Like, I just don't know that they have the offense that can kind of run away. They might have a defense that can tamp things down, but I look at it like 17-7 could feel like a bit of a butt kicking, but it's still not going to cover that spread, and it's one of those things where I could see Nebraska being in control of this game but not able to cover that number. I can also see this sort of being kind of like grin and bear it for 4 quarters and hope to get out of there at 20-13 or 20-17 or, whatever. I mean, I am not at the point where I'm just completely comfortable saying Nebraska should beat Northwestern or any of these teams on their schedule. Now, I feel like they will, but it's just not where it's that close to a 2-touchdown favorite to me. Just feels a little high. And I think Northwestern's defense is going to come out and have some wrinkles for Heinrich Harburg. Like, this is a big week for him because they had a bye. They had an opportunity to prepare. This is a relatively young quarterback going against a defensive head coach for the next 2 weeks. These are going to be some challenging games for different reasons, I think, for Nebraska. So I hope fans aren't coming in with the expectation that they're going to see 2021 Nebraska Northwestern. I don't think that's going to happen on Saturday.
Schaefer, what do you make of this Northwestern team who had the huge comeback against Minnesota, put up 37 points against a Minnesota team that Nebraska had a really hard time moving the ball against, although with a different quarterback and, to be fair, like almost entirely different skill position players at every spot at this point? Or you also have this as a Northwestern team that only beat Howard by 3. Like, how do you reconcile some of the results you've seen from Northwestern this year for what you expect to see on Saturday?
Yeah, I tend to think of that Minnesota game as a aberration. I mean, most of that happened in the final 20 minutes of game time. And so I don't really view that as indicative of what they are, but it also means that they could catch fire like that. I would think if Nebraska played Minnesota right now, they would have a better opportunity to beat them, even with all of their injuries and their limitations. Part of the difficulty of playing that game on a Thursday opening night is you just started your season. Like, they're just sort of getting into it. And so I think if they would have played them when Northwestern did, they'd have a better opportunity to have won that game. They still should have won the game when they played it in August. So I think Northwestern, again, has the opportunity to come in and make things difficult for Heinrich Harburg. I struggle to see where their offense is going to put up a lot of points. I think the total in this is like 41.5, which seems kind of high. Like, I kind of expect this game to stay in the teens, guys. I just don't think a lot of points are going to get put on the board.
Schaefer, Purdue is 2-5. Michigan State is 2-4. Maryland loses to Illinois. Iowa and Wisconsin look no better than any other team in the Big Ten West. down the stretch, Nebraska wins 1-2, 3-4, or 5-6 games.
I had them at 7-5 before the year. I'll go with 3-4. And in that 7-5 was wins against Minnesota and Colorado and a loss to Illinois. So far my prognostication skills leaving a lot.
You're on it.
Leaving a lot to be desired. But I think this is a 7-5 team. I think they can get there. I think they can get there if Heinrich Haarberg is their quarterback and Anthony Grant is their running back and Billy Kemp and a whole bunch of question marks at wide receiver, all because this defense gives them an opportunity in every game that they play in. And I think the scary thing for some people, Nebraska's just going to get better. Like just by the nature of what they have out there, Heinrich Haarberg should be getting better. Thomas Fedoni, who's only played 6 games in his entire career, I think he's going to be someone that could be really interesting those final couple games against Wisconsin and Iowa, maybe even could be the focal point of your red zone attack. So and this defense too, like they're going to get better. Like I think some of what excites me over the next 6 weeks is they have an opportunity to develop in real time in front of our eyes. And they've got a younger team than what you would realize with all of the injuries they've sustained so far.
Schaefer, we got about a minute here. Do you expect
I'll be quick.
I don't believe you. Do you expect to see Jeff Sims as part of the offense, even if Heinrich Haarberg continues as the starter and stays healthy? Do you expect to see a Jeff Sims package out there just to get a playmaker on the field?
I would love to see it. At this point, I don't know if I expect to see it because I don't know if they want to invite that quite yet. I think you maybe let Heinrich Haarberg continue to do what he's doing. And if you need Jeff Sims because Haarberg's banged up, then you go to that route. But I would love to see it. I just don't know if there's the confidence yet that they can do that and not raise a bunch of questions.
Mike J. Schaefer, Husker 24/7. You almost answered that too quick. We still got 30 seconds, Schaefer.
Oh, no. Well, timing has been an issue.
It's all right. We appreciate it, Schaefer. We'll talk to you again next week.
He's just another guy.
That is always true. That is always true. Just another guess.
How dare you with his beautiful baseballism hat.
See you, Shave.
We've got sports writer Jason Kelsey out here doing his best work for us. No, we appreciate Schaefer as always.
Does that mean you're dating Taylor Swift because you also have a beard?
No, because I'm not his brother.
Yeah, you are.
Not technically, not legally. Coming up next, we got more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Like just so you guys know me, because you're gonna hear what I'm like. We were playing Illinois, and I was like, "Hey, they're not going to move the ball against us today. I don't care if we run the ball every play and punt, and like that's just what you get when coaching. It's 25-mile-an-hour winds. Last thing that can be is a batted ball, right? Like we're going to play that way. So I want to score one more than the other team. That might be old school and kind of boring nowadays, but it'll result in good things in the long run.
Matt Rhule with the hot takes. I want to score more than the opponents. That's a wild coaching strategy. We'll see how it works.
Hey, I bet you'd win more games than you'd lose.
We'll see how it works out for him, Cotton. It's a dodgeball reference since
yes, I've seen dodgeball.
Since Shane was
you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Since Shane was making his Globo Gym comment earlier.
Is there any other coach out there that goes like 30 minutes?
I don't know. I don't watch a ton of their press conferences in their entirety.
And I say that, that was just yesterday, but he does that on a weekly basis almost. And he also, he makes available several players each week and all the assistant coaches. Right. And he's always at the end of like almost every other press conference, he's always like, you guys know where I'm at. My door's always open. I can answer any questions anytime. He's so transparent and he's just telling you everything that it is that he knows and I haven't seen any other coach like that. You definitely haven't seen any other coach like that as far as the football office goes down in Lincoln.
Well, other coaches I think do go that long on certain pressers, but Rhule doesn't go 30 minutes every time. Normally it's about like that 14 to 18 minute mark, which is still long. Don't get me wrong. After you get past 9 or 10 minutes, it's hard to stay for anybody to stay locked in.
Yeah.
But Rhule just does a really good job of, encapsulating what you want to see.
Yeah, and I don't know because
or hear. for that matter?
I don't know nationally how uncommon it is. I know it's like Shane said. I think it's really uncommon for what we've seen here. This hasn't been the way other coaches have operated basically for as long as
I mean, could you have seen Bo going 30 minutes? Mike Riley up there with the smile for 30 minutes.
Honestly, Mike Riley's probably the one that was most likely to go 30 minutes just because he didn't mind talking to people, you know. Frost certainly didn't want to talk that much. Pelini didn't want to talk that much.
Mm-hmm.
Callahan didn't think we were smart enough to be talked to for that long. You know, like there's Callahan was famous for that's pretty complicated, guys. I don't know if I want to get into that. It's pretty complicated.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can understand that.
You know, offense is complicated. I won't go into my Bill Callahan impression today,
No,
but
your entire team is complicated.
yeah, it was complicated. Wanted to get, speaking of coaches though, I kind of wanted to get into, you know, I was watching that Washington Oregon game that we talked about earlier.
Kalen DeBoer and
Dan Lanning.
Thank you. I was like, what's his name?
Former Georgia assistant
Mm-hmm.
Dan Lanning, who's brought that kind of SEC style football to the Pac-12 and soon to be over to the Big Ten. But it kind of got me thinking that about coaches we like it, and a lot of the coaches that I'm really, really high on haven't won a national title, right? I was trying to think of how many current coaches actually have a national title. Because like Ed Orgeron's not coaching right now. So you've got Saban, Sweeney, Smart. Is that it for active coaches that have a national title?
Was it Urban in 2015?
Yeah, that was at Ohio State with
okay.
Zeke, and so he's out right now.
I'm just trying to go back and I'm looking for new teams each year.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, because you got so much overlap with those handful of teams there. But I'm trying to think. I don't know that we don't have a ton of.
Did Chip Kelly win?
Chip Kelly didn't get one. I'm trying to go by year here if I can figure this out. So, Jimbo has one. Jimbo Fisher has one.
Oh, yeah.
At Florida State. But like Gene Chizik didn't get one or isn't still coaching. Urban's not coaching. Orgeron's not coaching.
Mac Brown
has one. So you're only talking about 5 guys, I think.
Mac Brown, dude. Speaking of Mac Brown,
that's wild.
He is like 7 wins or 6 wins away now from Saban on the all-time
Really?
list. Yeah, it's something crazy. I saw that stat when I was watching the Miami UNC game over the weekend. Mac Brown all-time wins record.
And I'm just honestly, I'm kind of just astounded by his ability to still be good in terms of. Like I thought when he came back after all that time off to go back to North Carolina, I didn't think there was a chance.
Okay, it's 17. He's actually 17 away.
Still, that's incredible.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah,
I believe they're the only 5 coaches in college football right now.
Because Les
won.
Miles isn't still coaching, and before that, we're going too far back. So there's only 5 coaches in 133 or whatever the number is of Division I coaches. So a lot of our favorite coaches have not won a national title, right?
And currently you have Kirby Smart, Jim Harbaugh, Ryan Day, and who's coaching at Florida State right now?
Mike Norvell.
Those are your top 4 right now.
Yeah.
So you have one guy in that mix that
has a national title. And then you want to go to number 5, Kalen DeBoer in Washington, who was coaching NAI football not that long ago at Sioux Falls.
You have to appreciate what he's done.
Now he's got national titles at Sioux Falls. You've got a bunch of guys that have, like Kleiman at Kansas State has titles at NDSU, which is closer obviously than NAI ball. But, I was kind of going through and it's like, I would take a lot of the guys, and part of it's an age thing, right? It's a lot of the guys that are older, and part of it's, I don't like Dabo Sweeney thing. And Jimbo, I think he lost his fastball. Like, I think I just haven't been impressed with him at Texas A&M at all. But so that leaves you Saban and Kirby Smart, basically, with guys guys that have won national titles that you feel any kind of good about. And so Saban is 71, I think. So that's probably
Yeah.
not a guy that you're like, hey, if you're hiring to start a program right now, like that's probably not a realistic option, even if he was available, right? And so I was kind of thinking like, okay, I really like Kalen DeBoer, been super impressed.
Yeah, I would love to see Washington make a run at it.
Absolutely.
This year. Don't really care for much Ryan Day to do it.
No,
and really, I wouldn't really care too much for Michigan to do it either because they're Big Ten opponents. But if there was between those two teams, I'd rather see Jim Harbaugh over Ryan Day.
Well, and Harbaugh's wild too, right? Because he actually hasn't won anything anywhere ever. Like he didn't win. I mean, obviously, he didn't even win a conference title at Stanford, I don't think. He obviously didn't win the Super Bowl with the 49ers, made one, didn't win one. I think he made 3 straight NFC championship games, didn't win a Super Bowl, and hasn't won. It has just recently won the Big Ten titles at Michigan, but hasn't been able to get over the hump to win a national title. For as big and famous and as much of a presence as he is in the sport, he's kind of over in terms of titles. And that's kind of where I was kind of getting at with this point was just there's so many coaches we think so highly of, and it's just such a drastic departure from the way we talk about, say, quarterbacks in the NFL, right? If you're a quarterback in the NFL and you're elite and you don't have a Super Bowl, you're nothing. Like that's a huge strike on your record, right?
Sure is.
Or in college football, if you're a head coach and you don't have a national title, like, yeah, people get on Lincoln Riley a little bit for not being able to get over the hump, but he's still considered this genius, right? I'm obsessed with Kalen DeBoer. I think Dan Lanning's a great football coach, right? Even Matt Rhule, people are like, yeah, that's a home run hire for Nebraska.
Brian Kelly is a fantastic
incredible football coach. Hasn't gotten a national title. Luke Fickell, great football coach, was considered a home run hire with Wisconsin. Hasn't.
Well, and some of it's not their fault. I mean, most of those national titles are sitting over in one guy's closet, and that's it. So I mean, if you divided
you get your run through recruiting.
Sure.
Like if you win a national championship, if you're that one-off team that wins, like yes, you will find a way.
Those guys have to be
relevant, right, for a good majority of time.
Sure.
Until you fall off or until some more trophies go into somebody else's closet. But it takes that one trophy. If you can get that one, you can probably get 3.
Yeah, you can get multiples.
Probably get 5.
I mean, LSU's the outlier here of just the one, right?
And they had
the perfect storm.
They had like 30 first-round picks next year.
And they had the perfect storm with Burrow and what was the offensive guy's name? They had the pass game coordinator that ended up, I think it was Quinn. It was, I don't know. It was something Brady. It wasn't Quinn. It was something Brady. But anyway, like they had this perfect storm of talent and Joe Burrow and assistant coaches right at the right time. But like Clemson won multiple, Georgia's won multiple, Bama's won multiple.
Florida State
was a one-off for that time period, right? But they again had Jameis Winston. They had,
but they were always competitive there too.
They made the playoff the next year. They had been really, really good for a stretch there. It's really hard to break into that group though,
right?
And get that stranglehold out of the SEC, right? Like I would love it if Kalen DeBoer was that guy to do it. I would be thrilled.
I'll tell you what. All said and done, I would rather have one-off teams than consecutive winning teams.
Oh, absolutely.
Just as a fan of college football, give me a little bit of variety.
There's nothing I want more than to see somebody crash that party this year. Coming up, Louie Vaccher, Wildcat Report, previewing Nebraska Northwestern. Wrapping up the show here today on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. We are joined now by Louie Vaccher. He covers Northwestern for Wildcat Report. Louie, how are you this morning?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Good.
We're doing good. It feels like we've talked to you a bunch this year.
Not enough.
Can't imagine why. Has there anything been going on with Northwestern sports this year?
No, not at all. It's been pretty quiet this offseason, yeah.
It's
good to be talking about football.
Right.
Like what I talked about all summer.
For sure. And we will keep it to football as much as possible here, Louie. Obviously, it's been – I mean, the expectations for this Northwestern team were, especially after the coaching change, incredibly low. I think a lot of teams were talking about – or a lot of people were talking about, maybe 1 or 2 wins for this team. I guess how – as you've watched this team progress throughout the season, how have they been able to end up at this point at 3-3, which I think most people would consider a huge victory for them at this point?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think David Braun has done a sensational job under, next to impossible circumstances, right? He's replacing the most beloved figure in Northwestern football history, and a lot of people were ticked off about it. And he's an interim coach. He doesn't know what his future looks like. He doesn't know what his staff's future looks like, and it was a very trying situation, and he's got them at 3-3. They took care of business. They won 2 games they were supposed to, really, against UTEP and Howard. Though Howard, they squeaked by. That was they escaped with that one, and they pulled out a big win against Minnesota. They were down 31-10 in the fourth quarter and came back and won. So that was a big one there. And here they are at 3-3 at the, coming off the bye week. It's going to get a little tougher now as they're in the, it's all Big Ten teams from here on out. But I think he's exceeded expectations. The players absolutely love him. He's an open, honest, earnest guy, very straightforward, and he's handled everything about as well as you can. So I think he has exceeded expectations, and his team has too.
Louie, speaking of Braun, I was listening back to that press conference after the Penn State loss, and it seemed almost like he expressed a little bit of remorse about some aggressive play calling, yet that's kind of his brand at the end of the day. Do you think his decision-making at all will change in a game like this where he plays another top defense in the country, a top 25 in total defensive team in Nebraska? Or do you see what happened against Penn State evolving and maybe getting more aggressive with a little bit more confidence against the Huskers?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, me personally, I look at that. So the Penn State game, he had 2 fourth down calls where they went for it in the third quarter. In the game, it was a 1-score game, and they went for it on a 4th and 1 in their own end. And that one I thought was defensible. I thought that was a kind of aggressive play call. The second one was a 4th and 4. Against that defense, they went with a fake punt and fell a yard short. Again, it was deep in their own end, and Penn State took it in, and then it was a 3-score game, and it was over at that point. But, certainly he didn't have anything to lose. I don't think it changes the outcome. I don't think they were going to upset Penn State or anything like that, but it did end the game. And I think in a game like that, it's okay to be aggressive. This is one where, now you're in the Big Ten West. Northwestern is still – they're 1-0 in the Big Ten West. They're still, looking at the rest of the division. It's up for grabs. Iowa has kind of separated themselves, but other than that, I think even though Northwestern's a 12.5-point underdog on Saturday, they feel like they have a shot. So I don't think he's going to be overly aggressive, but he's still going to take some shots when he can, because, they got to find a way to manufacture some points. Their offense has been struggling, and especially against a defense like that, when you get an opportunity, you got to take advantage of it for sure.
Louie, I'm curious, sort of big picture with David Braun. I guess, how serious is his candidacy to become the permanent head coach? Is that something that's even sort of been talked about yet, or has it really just been trying to keep everybody's head above water and they haven't even kind of started having those discussions yet?
Yeah, they haven't said anything about it. Northwestern's administration isn't going to say anything, and Braun is just focused on the season. And, that guy is, you talk about a guy drinking from a fire hose in terms of a learning curve this year. This is his first Power 5 job. It's his first time head coach at any level. So this is, it's been a baptism by fire, and he's just trying to keep his head above water. I do think he's going to be certainly in the discussion at this point. I think he may get an interview or something like that. I don't know if we'll go with him. There's still a lot of questions about him, because it's not only taking over a Power 5 program. It's, they're coming out, they got this hazing scandal looming overhead. You don't know if any staff is going to be back. They might clear house. They may bring back some. He could come back as a defensive coordinator. That could be, I think, an ideal situation if that happens. There's so much uncertainty around the program right now that, it hasn't even been addressed. And I don't think anybody really knows. I think there will be a coaching search. I think he has proven that he should at least get an interview. He should be, one of the first guys in line. I don't know if he hasn't done enough right now to make a decision like that. But, you know, by the end of the year, we'll see what his resume looks like.
Now, Louie, speaking of uncertainty, Ben Bryant's status up in the air against Nebraska, and Coach Braun also addressing that yesterday and non-committed to really giving an answer for that. Is it going to be the Bryant show this weekend, or do you think backup Brendan Sullivan will get the call?
Yeah, I tell you, that was a bit of a surprise, because I think Braun kind of downplayed it a little bit when he missed the last game. You know, he got hurt against Penn State, and they said they thought he would be okay. And everybody thought that they would give him a rest against Howard, because they didn't really need him against the FCS team. So it was surprising yesterday when he just said he's progressing. He didn't say if he was going to practice this week, and he's not sure about his status moving forward. So that was a big blow right there for Northwestern, because I tell you, Brendan Sullivan really struggled against Howard last week. He looked a little tentative and hesitant out there, and I think they're going to have some issues, because I thought against Nebraska, especially with their run defense, Northwestern's best shot was going to be able to throw the ball, you know, and Ben Bryant is that guy. He's by far the best passer. So if they have to go with a Sullivan, I think we may see Ryan Holinsky. You know, he's still in the picture. I think he's the best passer left out of the guys remaining if Bryant can't go. I wonder if they might go that route and try to throw the ball more, because I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball against the Huskers.
Louie, as you look at the remaining schedule for Northwestern, obviously not a ton of world beaters in that Big Ten West, even Iowa, who has, like you said, separated themselves a bit, doesn't look unbeatable, certainly by any stretch of the imagination. I guess what would be a successful last half of the season for Northwestern?
Yeah, if they can get a couple more wins, I think that would be great. You know, they still have a shot at getting the 6 wins and making a bowl. I think that would be the best possible outcome if they could pull that off. And like I said, it's going to be tough. I think Saturday would become kind of a must-win. You know, you mentioned Iowa. You still feel like you could have a shot against Iowa just because they don't score either. Mm-hmm. You know, Northwestern can't score, neither can they. If you get, you know, someone puts the ball on the ground a couple times, you might have a shot there. But if they could get a couple more wins in the second half, if they can get to 3 and make a bowl game, I think, you know, David Braun could be your Big Ten Coach of the Year. And at that point, maybe they do, you know, hire him as the permanent head coach moving forward. So, you know, they still feel like they have a lot to play for in the second half. And they're certainly their number one goal is to make a bowl game. And we'll see if they'll have to go 3-3 again. Like I said, I think it's a long shot, but they'll be in some of these games. I don't think, you know, and like I said, even though they're 12.5-point favorites or underdogs on Saturday, I still think like they feel like they have a shot against Nebraska.
Louie, we spoke with one of our Nebraska insiders already today, and we all kind of agreed that the spread of 12 right now seems a bit high in favor of Nebraska. Both teams coming off the bye week, well rested, hopefully a little bit more healthy. How do you envision this game going? Does it match what the spread is showing, or do you think it'll end up much closer?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I think Ben Bryant is the big wild card here, because if he can't go, boy, it's going to be awfully tough for Northwestern to get a win. I just think that they won't be able to run the ball, and they can't. Their biggest problem is stopping the run defensively. I think Nebraska, you look at Nebraska, though, they're still like -7 in turnover margin, I think it is, on the season. I just looked at it yesterday. I think they're 130th in the country in turnover margin. So there's your hope, right? So if Nebraska turns it over a couple times and keeps you in the game, if you hang around, maybe they'll give you the ball a couple times and you can sneak out with a win. But without Bryant there, boy, that's going to be a lot tougher. And I think it could be a closer game with him in there. Without him, it's going to, like I said, I think that's probably, it's a couple score game. I think that's pretty accurate if Brian can't go.
Louie Vaccher, Wildcat Report, covering Northwestern. Louie, we appreciate your time as always. Hopefully we talk again soon, strictly about football things though.
Thanks, Louie.
That's right. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for having me.
That's Louie Vaccher Wildcat Report. We appreciate Louie's time as always. Always very giving to us as
we appreciate all our listeners' time for always giving their attention to us for 3 hours.
Giving their time and attention to us, whether you're listening on YouTube, Twitter, ESPN, Tri-Cities, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, or KFOR in Lincoln. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
See ya.